You lie down thinking you are safe, that the world is stable, that there is such a thing as laws, but the very ground you trust is only a shifting agreement of words and forgotten assumptions. Every law of the universe you have ever been told is a story, and every story is already rotting at its core. What follows is not a list of strange rules, but the dismantling of the frame itself, until you cannot tell whether the universe is governed by laws or whether the only law is collapse itself. You have built your entire sense of self on memory. You think of yourself as a timeline, a continuous thread stitched together from childhood to now, a collection of faces, moments, sensations that prove you were there, that you existed, that what you recall is weight. But memory is not a storage device, not a recording, not a neutral witness. It is an act of invention. Each time you remember something, you are not pulling up a fixed image, but rewriting it, altering it, layering over it with the present moment, influenced by what you want to believe or what you fear to admit. Psychologists have proven this in brutal detail. Elizabeth Loftus demonstrated that entire false memories could be planted with nothing more than suggestion. Subjects could be convinced that they had once been lost in a shopping mall, that they had seen Bugs Bunny at Disneyland, that they had committed acts they never performed. Not once, not twice, but systematically, across studies, people swore to events that never occurred, then described them in vivid detail, with the same confidence they applied to real memories. Your sense of self, the story of who you are, depends on a neurological system that functions more like a dream. Factory than an archive dot, every time you recall a childhood event, the neurons refire, but not with perfect fidelity. They are distorted by the current state of your brain, by your mood, by your recent experiences, by what you unconsciously need to be true. The next time you recall that same event, you are not remembering the event, you are remembering the last time you remembered it, complete with all the distortions you added then. By now, the original may be gone entirely, replaced by a palimpsest of errors, like a photocopy of a photocopy until nothing real remains. Think about that. The you that you trust, the you who tells stories about where you came from, the sequence of decisions that shaped you, the pain and joy that gave you texture, may be nothing more than an elaborate lie, woven together by your own brain without consent. You are living inside a fiction authored by faulty recall, and this lie extends beyond the personal. Entire nations depend on collective memory, and collective memory is even less reliable. History is curated forgetting. What your country remembers is only what it chooses not to erase. What your culture believes about itself is as fragile as awe. What you believe about yourself, warped by power, by ideology, by the selective editing of who got to write the textbooks and who was silenced. Every parade, every anthem, every monument is a mnemonic device designed to overwrite alternative versions of the past. What if everything you take as national truth is the product of the same distortion as your own flawed recollections only, magnified across millions of people, and yet you cannot escape it? Try to imagine yourself without memory, and you dissolve. Strip away the stories of your past, and the continuity vanishes. But if memory is false, then who are you? A body with no story? A creature hallucinating its own biography? When you close your eyes tonight, how much of you will evaporate into the same haze as last night's dream? Reshape the moment you recall it again tomorrow. The danger is not just that memory lies, it's that you cannot know when it is lying. The confidence you feel in a recollection has no correlation with accuracy. People most certain of their memories are often the least accurate. The brain mistakes emotional vividness for truth, when in fact, the very intensity of emotion may signal distortion. So you cannot trust certainty, and you cannot trust doubt, and you cannot trust the very act of questioning itself, because the ground you are standing on, the past you are using to measure, is shifting mud. This is the first strange law of the universe. The law that memory does not preserve, it fabricates. Every time you reach backward, you destroy what you hope to retrieve. And yet, without it, you are nothing but a hollow animal blinking in the present dot. So then, who are you? You believe you see the world. You believe that when you open your eyes, the room appears. The walls exist. The objects sit in their places as though revealed to you directly. But you have never seen the world. You have only seen the brains. Reconstruction of fragments, guesses, hallucinations stitched together into something you mistake for reality. The retina does not capture a photograph. Light strikes cells. Patterns of excitation travel along the optic nerve, and then the brain fills in the gaps. The optic nerve itself has a blind spot where no data enters. Yet you do not see a hole in your vision. Your brain patches it over, seamlessly inventing content, giving you the illusion of a continuous field. This is not a flaw, it is the system. You are hallucinating part of every scene you claim to observe. Psychologists call this perceptual filling in. Neurologists know. It is unavoidable. You believe you see a chair, but what you see is a constructed guess that there is a chair. You never experience raw light, raw shapes, raw atoms. You experience the prediction that your brain has generated based on partial input and prior expectation. When that prediction is disrupted by illusions, by magic tricks, by optical experiments, you are reminded how fragile the construction is. Take the famous checker shadow illusion by Edward Adelson. A square in shadow, physically darker than another in light, is perceived as brighter because your brain compensates, inventing a false brightness that does not exist on the page. Or consider the invisible gorilla experiment by Christopher Chebris and Daniel Simons. Participants asked to count. Basketball passes fail to notice a man in a gorilla suit walking through the scene. You believe you have open vision, but you are blind to what does not fit your expectation. You filter reality to maintain coherence. What else has walked through your perception, unseen, because it did not match the story your brain wanted to tell? You are not perceiving the world. You are imprisoned in a simulation manufactured by your own nervous system. Your eyes, ears, skin, every sense is not a window, but a filter, stripping away almost everything. You hear between 20 and 20,000 hertz, yet the world vibrates across frequencies far beyond. You see wavelengths between 400 and 700 nanometers, yet most of the electromagnetic spectrum is invisible. Radio waves, gamma rays, infrared, they pass through you now, unseen, unfelt. The world is saturated with signals, but your prison bars admit only a narrow slit, and still, you call this reality. But your dog perceives another spectrum of smell, detecting histories of presence invisible to you. A bat navigates with echolocation, perceiving dimensions of texture you cannot fathom. A mantis shrimp sees color channels you cannot imagine. Their universes are not yours, yet they live within them with the same certainty you live within yours. Which one of you sees the real world? Which one of you is hallucinating? The philosopher Immanuel Kant insisted that we never know the thing in itself. Das Ding in sich, only the phenomena filtered through our categories of perception. Modern neuroscience confirms this bleak proposition. Perception is not revelation, but useful delusion. You do not see what is. You see what keeps you alive long enough to reproduce. Your perception is an instrument of survival, not of truth. Is why illusions are not exceptions. They are the rule exposed. Every time you are deceived by a trick of light or sound, you glimpse the underlying fraudulence of all perception. The system is not designed to show you reality, but to trick you into a coherent hallucination stable enough to function. Now, ask yourself, if all you perceive is a filtered hallucination, then what is out there? If your entire existence is mediated by neural predictions, what lies beyond the veil of sense? And if you cannot step outside the hallucination, if you are trapped in a perceptual prison whose walls you cannot see, then how would you ever know? You measure your life in hours, days, years, as if time were a river flowing in one direction, carrying you along from birth to death. You wear clocks on your wrists. You structure your work around calendars. You speak of the past and the future as though they were places. But time is not what you think it is. Physics has shown again and again that your ordinary sense of time linear, stable, irreversible, is a deception, a convenient story told by your nervous system. Einstein's relativity dismantled the naive assumption of universal simultaneity. There is no single objective now that every observer shares. Time stretches, bends, slows. Astronauts on the International Space Station returned to Earth having aged milliseconds less than those who remained behind. In theory, if you traveled close enough to the speed of light, you could experience a few hours while centuries passed on Earth. The rate of time is not fixed. It is relative to motion and gravity. Your clock ticks differently depending on where and how you exist. And if relativity fractures time, quantum mechanics obliterates it further. At the quantum scale, particles exist in superpositions neither here nor there, neither before nor after, until observation forces them into a state. Experiments in quantum entanglement suggest that correlations can occur across space-like separations without any time ordering at all. John Wheeler's delayed choice experiment showed that decisions made in the present can seemingly influence the behavior of particles in the past. What does before and after mean if causality itself collapses under scrutiny? But the real betrayal is not just in physics, it is in your own perception. Neuroscience has revealed that your sense of now is not immediate. The brain stitches together events into a window of approximately 80 to 100 milliseconds and then presents it to consciousness as a seamless moment. This means you are always living slightly in the past, experiencing a delayed reconstruction. Every sound you hear, every movement you see, is already over by the time you experience it. The present is a lagging illusion. Worse still, your perception of duration is elastic, bending under emotion and circumstance. A moment of terror stretches into eternity. A decade of routine vanishes in a blink. Psychologists call this time dilation and time compression, but these are just polite words for the chaos of your inner clock. There is no steady march forward, only subjective distortions shaped by fear, boredom, novelty, or trauma. The life you think you have lived may be shorter, longer, or entirely unlike what you think, because your measurement device, your consciousness, is not reliable. And then comes entropy, the arrow of time. Thermodynamics tells you that systems move from order to disorder, that entropy increases, that the past is different from the future only because of this statistical tendency. But at the level of fundamental laws, time is symmetrical. The equations of Newtonian mechanics, of relativity, of quantum physics, they all work just as well backward as forward. There is nothing in the mathematics that privileges forward. The arrow you feel is not fundamental, but emergent, a byproduct of initial conditions. In principle, the universe could just as easily be running backward, and you would not know dot. So what does this mean for you? The time you cling to as the framework of your life is unstable at every level. It bends with velocity. It fractures under quantum mechanics. It delays in your neurons. It warps with your emotions. It flows from order to disorder, only as a statistical illusion. The very thing you measure your existence against, the thing you say you are running out of, may not exist in any stable form at all dot, and yet you live as though it were solid. You mourn the past as if it were fixed. You fear the future as if it were determined. You waste the present as if it were real. But if time's a fabrication, then what is death? If there is no true past, no true future, no stable present, then what does it mean to end? If time is not real, then what is it exactly that you are running out of? You say, I, as though it meant something fixed. You wake each morning and believe there is a continuous thread binding the infant you once were to the adult you have become. You believe there is a self, a core, a permanent entity that experiences, decides, remembers, and owns your life. But the more closely you examine this self, the more it disintegrates. Start with neuroscience. Split-brain experiments in the 20th century conducted by Roger Sperry and Michael Gazzaniga showed that when the corpus callosum connecting the brain's hemispheres is severed, two independent streams of consciousness emerge. One hemisphere may see an image and act on it, while the other remains oblivious. Yet each hemisphere confabulates explanations, creating the illusion of a unified I. Which half is the real you? The left hemisphere, inventing rational stories to explain actions it did not initiate? The right hemisphere, acting without verbal awareness? Or neither? Now consider David Hume, centuries earlier, who looked within and found no stable self, only a bundle of perceptions. Every moment, sensations arise and vanish. The I is not an entity, but a narrative cohesion projected across time. Buddhism reached the same conclusion long before. The doctrine of anatta, the absence of self. What you think of as you is only a flux of sensations, thoughts, and conditions, none of which endure. Modern psychology reinforces this. The interpreter module of the brain constantly fabricates coherence. You believe you chose your actions, but many decisions are initiated in the brain before you are aware of them. Benjamin Libet's famous experiments revealed readiness, potentials in the brain, milliseconds before subjects reported deciding to act. The conscious self lags behind, claiming authorship of actions already underway. Free will dissolves into after-the-fact storytelling. And what about memory, already exposed as fabrication? The self that clings to those memories is therefore clinging to lies. The body changes cell by cell over the years. The neurons that encode your current identity are not the same neurons that once encoded your childhood. There is no unbroken thread, only replacement and erasure. The persistence of identity is as illusory as the persistence of a flame. The fire looks continuous, but the material is constantly replaced. You can test this illusion directly. Sit quietly and search for the self. You will find sensations, the pressure of your body, the sound in your ears, the flicker of thoughts. But where is the owner of those sensations? The thought I arises, but who observes it? Another thought? Look long enough, and you find only thoughts observing thoughts, sensations observing sensations. The self vanishes under scrutiny, like mist in sunlight. Yet society insists on the self. Law requires it, morality assumes it, economics depends on it. You sign contracts, you make promises, you are held accountable as though a single, enduring agent exists. But beneath the surface, the truth gnaws. The self is a convenient fiction, a practical hallucination your brain performs to keep the organism functional. Without the self, what are you? A series of moments with no owner? A shifting kaleidoscope of perceptions pretending to cohere? Or worse, just a machine, an algorithmic process with no one inside, a hollow theater where thoughts play to an empty audience? You cling to the word I, because without it, the floor falls away. But if there is no self, then who is clinging? If the I is only a grammatical trick, then who is asking this question right now? So tell me, if there is no self, then who exactly is reading these words? You assume that the world is made of objects, that things exist out there, solid and independent of you. You walk through rooms, touch surfaces, pick up tools, eat food, and believe these things persist, whether or not you observe them. But the frame of reality, the very concept of objects in space and time, collapses under inspection. Quantum physics makes this collapse explicit. The double-slit experiment shows that particles, when unobserved, exist not as discrete entities, but as probability waves, superpositions smeared across possibilities. Only when measured, when observed, does the wave function collapse into a definite outcome. Before observation, the particle is not here or there. It is both and neither. What then is the object? Does it exist independently, or does existence itself hinge on observation? Wheeler's delayed choice experiments. Sharpen the blade. Choices made in the present appear to retroactively determine the behavior of particles in the past. The act of framing reality, the decision of how to measure, changes not just what is seen, but what was. This is not science fiction. It is physics. The boundary between reality and perception does not exist the way you want it to. The frame itself bends to the act of observation. Even in classical physics, solidity is an illusion. The chair you sit on is mostly empty space. Atoms are 99.999% void. The nucleus is tiny compared to the orbiting electrons, and those electrons are not even little balls. They are probability clouds, mathematical abstractions of possible positions. When you press your hand against the table, you are not touching solid matter. You are feeling electromagnetic repulsion, the electron fields of your hand and the table pushing against one another. What you call touch is the denial of entry, a force field refusing overlap. You have never touched anything in your life. And then there is the problem of perception itself. You see objects, but vision is interpretation, not revelation. Your brain segments reality into categories: chair, wall, tree, not because those categories exist fundamentally, but because your nervous system simplifies chaos into usable units. Look at the famous Gestalt illusions. A collection of black splotches is interpreted as a Dalmatian, or as a vase, or as two faces. The object depends on how the mind frames it. Perhaps all of reality is like this: splotches of data interpreted into convenient shapes. Philosophers have long suspected this. George Berkeley claimed that to be is to be perceived, that objects do not exist independently, but only in minds. Kant argued that space and time themselves are not properties of the world, but categories of human perception. And now physics edges toward similar conclusions. Reality may not exist in any definite state until it is observed. What does this mean for you? The frame of reality, the assurance that there is a stable world out there, existing independently of your perception, is fragile. Perhaps it is nothing but a useful hallucination, stitched together by brains desperate for order. Perhaps when you turn your head, the world behind you does not exist until you look again. Perhaps objects are not things, but events, collapses of probability in the act of attention. You live as though the world is stable, as though objects persist. But if observation shapes reality, if solidity is empty space, if categories are imposed by your mind, then the world you trust may not exist in the way you think not. So ask yourself this: when you look away from the screen and no one else is watching, does the world remain? Or does it vanish into nothing until you dare to turn back? Every thought you have ever had, every idea you have ever held, has been shaped, confined by language. You believe you are thinking freely, but your thoughts are bound to the categories and structures of words. You cannot name a color you have not been taught to see. You cannot describe an experience without cutting it into grammatical pieces. Language is not merely a tool you use to express thought. It is the frame that dictates what kinds of thoughts are possible. Consider the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, the theory that language shapes perception and cognition. Cultures with fewer words for colors literally see the spectrum differently. The Himba people of Namibia categorize greens and blues with terms so alien to English that they can distinguish subtle shades we collapse into one, while at the same time they fail to differentiate blues that seem obvious to us. Their reality is segmented differently, not because the world is different, but because their language permits different distinctions. Even time itself bends under language. The Hopi language, famously studied by Benjamin Lee Horff, does not divide time into discrete past, present, and future in the way English does. Hopi speakers conceive of events as ongoing processes, not as points on a line. Their reality flows differently, not because physics changes, but because words direct attention in ways that structure experience. And yet you believe language reveals truth. But every word is a compression, a distortion, a lie. The word tree collapses thousands of unique beings into a single category. The word justice attempts to pin down centuries of conflict, ambiguity, contradiction. When you say I, you invoke a hollow symbol, pretending to capture something that, as you have seen, does not exist as a stable entity. Language is not a transparent window. It is a stained glass prison, coloring everything you see. Philosophy has wrestled with this for centuries. Ludwig Wittgenstein declared that the limits of language are the limits of the world. Whereof one cannot speak, thereof one must be silent. But silence does not mean the ineffable does not exist. It means you can never hold it, never shape it, never share it. You are trapped in the cage of what can be said. And notice how recursive the trap becomes. Even now, as you read this, you cannot think about language without using language. You cannot escape the frame without reinforcing it. Every attempt to break free becomes another sentence, another metaphor, another cage. Science itself is not immune. Theories are expressed in symbols, equations, models, all forms of language. We pretend mathematics is pure and universal, but even numbers are a form of description, not reality itself. The universe does not speak mathematics. It is only we who impose that structure, slicing the ineffable into units we can manipulate. Perhaps the laws of physics themselves are only the limits of our descriptive system, not the structure. Of reality, what would remain of your world if you stripped away words? Imagine 1 minute without inner speech. No I, no now, no this. Only raw sensation, yet even then, your brain would rush to translate, to label, to impose order. Language colonizes even silence. So here's the trap. Everything you know is mediated by symbols, yet the symbols are not the thing itself. You confuse the map with the territory, the word with the world, the name with the reality. And if your thoughts are bound by this system, then perhaps you have never thought at all, only rearranged cages within cages. If every word you use is already a distortion, already a prison, then tell me, what is it you think you know? You live inside your body as though it were yours. You call it my hand, my heart, my brain, as though ownership were clear, as though the thing that says I were separate from the thing of flesh. But the body is not a possession. It is a process, a shifting colony of matter, most of which is not even you. Begin with the cells. Every 7 to 10 years, nearly every atom in your body is replaced. Skin sheds, bones renew, the gut lining replaces itself in days. You are not made of the same matter you once were. What continuity do you think you inhabit? If all the material has been swapped, then what is the you that persists? A pattern? A memory? But we have already seen memory is unreliable. Look deeper, and the betrayal sharpens. You are outnumbered by microbes. For every human cell, there are roughly as many bacterial cells inhabiting you, colonizing your gut, your skin, your mouth. Your digestion, your mood, your immune system are all regulated by this foreign population. The neurotransmitters that sculpt your emotions, serotonin, dopamine, GABA are influenced by bacterial activity in your gut microbiome. Are you the author of your feelings, or are you a puppet dancing to the chemical whispers of microbes? The brain, your supposed throne of self, is no sanctuary. Studies in neuropsychology reveal how fragile its claims to sovereignty are. Damage to the frontal lobe can erase empathy. A tumor pressing on the amygdala can turn calmness into rage. A few milligrams of a drug can dissolve fear, ignite euphoria, collapse identity. One lesion, one chemical imbalance, one disrupted circuit. The you rely on is unrecognizable. How can you call yourself autonomous when your existence can be rewritten so easily by molecules, injuries, accidents? And the senses betray you as well. Phantom limb syndrome demonstrates that the body is mapped in the brain in ways that persist beyond the flesh. Amputees feel pain in hands that no longer exist. The body image is not the body, but a neurological hallucination. Even now, when you feel the pressure of your chair or the weight of your limbs, you are not feeling the world. You are feeling neural maps, electrical storms interpreted as embodiment. The self in the body is just another simulation. Even your continuity of form is precarious. Imagine the ship of Theseus. Replace each plank of a ship, one by one, until none of the original material remains. Is it still the same ship? Now apply this to your body: atoms replaced, cells recycled, microbes dying and multiplying. At what point did you stop being the one who was born? At what point will the body you inhabit no longer be yours? And then comes the final cruelty. Your body is programmed for decay. The same cells that keep you alive accumulate damage, mutations, breakdowns, telomeres shorten, DNA fragments, systems collapse. The vehicle you call mine is built to betray you, to fail, to rot. Every heartbeat is not a gift, it is a countdown dot. So what, then, is this body you cling to? A temporary scaffolding, a collection of borrowed parts, a host for microbes, a machine already breaking itself down. If it is you, then you are. Fragile, transient, replaceable. If it is not you, then who are you without it? When the body turns against you, as it inevitably will, what will remain? The law of causalities collapse you. Live as though the world runs on chains of cause and effect. One thing happens, then another, and another, and you comfort yourself with the illusion that you can trace the sequence that the past explains. That the present determines the future. This belief in causality is the skeleton of your reality. But bones can break. David Hume shattered it centuries ago. Look closely, he said, and you never actually see causation. You see one event, then another, but the necessary connection between them is never observed. A billiard ball strikes another. The second moves. You assume the first caused the second, but all you really see is sequence. The sense of causality, the glue that binds events, is supplied by your mind, not by the world. You project necessity, where there is only succession. Science claims to fix this gap with laws, equations, models. Yet the most fundamental physics undermines it. In quantum mechanics, radioactive decay occurs without cause. An atom emits a particle, not because of any trigger, but spontaneously, probabilistically. The most basic processes of matter unfold without reason. You want to say, everything happens for a reason, but physics whispers, nothing needs one. Chaos theory deepens the wound. Even in deterministic systems, outcomes become unpredictable beyond a horizon. The flap of a butterfly's wing can, through sensitivity to initial conditions, alter the course of a hurricane weeks later. The idea of control collapses, not because the system is random, but because it is too exquisitely sensitive for prediction. In practice, cause and effect blur into noise. and neuroscience twists the knife further. Libet's experiments revealed that neural activity predicting a decision occurs before conscious awareness of making the choice. If your own actions arise before you decide, then what does it mean to say you cause your behavior? You are more spectator than author, watching choices unfold and then retroactively claiming ownership. Consider also the placebo effect. The body heals not from the drug itself, but from the belief in the drug. Belief causes physiology to change. Yet belief itself arises from suggestion, culture, expectation. Where is the root cause? In the pill? In the mind? In the doctor's authority? Or in the cultural script that gave you trust? The threads entangle until cause dissolves into a web with no origin dot, and history, too, betrays causality. You are told stories of revolutions, wars, inventions as if they unfolded because of singular causes. This assassination triggered that war. This discovery caused that progress. But history is a fog of contingencies, accidents, forgotten influences. One storm, one fever, one misinterpreted word could have rewritten everything. What you are told as causal inevitability is, in truth, a sequence of accidents stitched together. By narrative after the fact, you want causality because it gives you control. If A causes B, you can manipulate A to secure B. If you understand the chain, you can act within it. But what if the chain is a fiction? What if events arise without cause, or with too many entangled causes to trace, or with causes that only exist in retrospect? What does it mean to live in a world where the most basic question, why, may have no answer at all? So here is the law. Causality is not in the world, but in your mind. You impose it, because without it, the universe would be unbearable. Chaos. But if the chain is not real, then what holds the world together? If nothing truly follows from anything, then why does anything happen at all? And when you ask yourself why you are reading these words right now, are you sure you know? The cause? You take consciousness for granted, as though it were a simple light switched on inside your head. You believe you are aware that there is a clear boundary between waking and sleeping, between existing and not existing. But consciousness is not a light. It is a wound, a mystery with no origin, the most intimate fact of your existence, and the least explainable. Philosophers call it the hard problem of consciousness. How do physical processes in the brain, electrical signals, chemical exchanges, firing neurons, give rise to subjective experience? How does matter become sensation, the taste of bitterness, the color red, the pain of loss? No one knows. Science can trace correlations. This brain region lights up when you feel fear. This neurotransmitter spikes when you feel joy. But correlation is not explanation. The abyss remains. How does blind matter know it is matter? Some argue consciousness is an illusion, a trick of the brain to make itself seem central. But who is experiencing the illusion? Even if you are a hallucination, the hallucination itself is undeniable. As Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. But what exactly? Is the I that experiences the thinking? You cannot answer without spiraling into paradox. Experiments in neuroscience expose the fragility of consciousness. Under anesthesia, awareness can vanish completely, yet with no sense of passage when it returns. Hours disappear into a gap, as though you ceased to exist. Where were you during that time? Were you anywhere? In deep sleep, in blackout, in seizures, your consciousness evaporates and then reappears with no memory of non-existence. What does it mean to vanish so easily? Split brain. Studies raise the possibility of multiple consciousnesses inside one skull. Altered states induced by psychedelics, meditation, trauma dissolve the boundaries of self and world, flooding the mind with sensations that cannot be explained by ordinary neural activity. Near-death experiences, though scientifically dissected, still return with the haunting quality of something more than hallucination. Consciousness refuses to stay in its box dot and then consider the possibility that consciousness is not confined to you. Panpsychism, the idea that all matter has some fundamental aspect of awareness, has resurfaced in serious philosophical debate. If true, then consciousness is not an emergent property of brains, but the ground of reality itself. But if every particle contains a sliver of awareness, what is your individuality but a temporary assembly? A ripple in a universal field, destined to dissolve? You think of your mind as private, but even privacy collapses. Experiments in predictive neuroscience have begun decoding intentions from brain scans before subjects act. Artificial intelligence models now read neural patterns and reconstruct images you are seeing or words you are imagining. The barrier between thought and world is thinner than you believe. What you once considered the deepest sanctuary, silence of your own mind, may soon be penetrable. And here lies the abyss. You cannot prove that anyone else is conscious. You assume it, project it, but you have no access. The philosopher's problem of other minds remains unsolved. For all you know, you alone exist, surrounded by puppets of flesh, empty shells that simulate awareness but feel nothing. Or, worse perhaps, you are the puppet, and what you call consciousness is just noise in a meaningless system dot. So what is consciousness? A hallucination? A fundamental property of matter? An accident of evolution? A cruel trick that makes you aware of your own decay? No answer holds. The abyss swallows every explanation dot, and if you cannot explain why you are aware at all, then why are you so sure you should be? You imagine memory as a faithful recording device, a storage bank of the self, a permanent archive of your life. But every time you recall, you do not retrieve a file, you rewrite it. The act of remembering is the act of destroying what was. Once remembered, memory is not a library. It is a fire. Psychological research proves this. Elizabeth Loftus's experiments on false memories show how easily suggestion plants entire events in the mind, crimes never committed, childhood traumas that never happened, faces never seen. With the right cues, people will swear with absolute conviction that they experienced what they never did. Your memory is not evidence. It is performance. Even your truest, most sacred recollections are riddled with distortions. Neuroscience reveals that each time a memory is accessed, it becomes malleable, subject to change before being stored again. The reconsolidation process overwrites the past with fragments of the present, which means your most vivid experiences, your first love, the day someone died, the moment you felt alive, are already counterfeits. The more you cherish them, the more you corrupt them. This isn't just theory. Entire societies build themselves on collective memory, and those memories are equally unreliable. Histories are curated, rewritten, edited to serve the present. Nations remember victories and forget massacres. Cultures mythologize, distort, and invent. What you call the past is a story told by those who survived it. Consider how much of your own life is already missing. Infantile amnesia erases your earliest years. Trauma can wipe entire spans into silence. Even ordinary forgetting consumes nearly everything. You have lived thousands of days you cannot recall, faces you no longer recognize, words you once spoke but will never hear again. Entire versions of yourself have been obliterated, and when you do remember, time itself is warped. A psychologist, Endel Talding, noted that episodic memory is not a passive retrieval. It is mental time travel. Each recollection is a reconstruction, a simulation of the past rendered in the present. You do not step back into what was. You drag what was into now, staining it with your current perspective. Every act of remembering is also an act of forgetting, but the horror cuts deeper. You trust memory to anchor identity, to tell you who you are. Yet what are you when your memories shift? Alzheimer's disease strips the self away piece by piece, but so is ordinary forgetting. The continuity you feel, that unbroken thread of I, is stitched together from fragments, many of them false. Remove enough fragments, and the thread unravels. So who are you without your stories? Who are you without lies? Even collective memory, amplified through technology, offers no escape. Photographs and videos feel like proof, but they too are selective, staged, interpreted. Digital archives may preserve data, but interpretation changes, and with it meaning. Future generations will look back at what you call truth and see only distortion. And if memory is unreliable, then what does it mean to say you have lived life at all? If your past is unfaithful, is your identity anything more than a hallucination sustained by error? What is left of you once you can no longer trust the very stories that tell you that you exist? You tell yourself that you are someone, a name, a body, a history stitched into a coherent I. But when you follow this thread carefully, the figure you think you are begins to disintegrate. Identity, like memory, is not a foundation. It is scaffolding around nothing. Philosophers have chased this question for centuries. David Hume, peeling back his own mind, admitted he could never catch himself without also catching some fleeting perception, a color, a sound, a feeling. The self, he concluded, was just a bundle of impressions, like beads strung on no thread. And if the beads scatter, what remains? Psychology confirms the fragility. In the phenomenon of dissociative identity disorder, one body splinters into multiple cells, each with its own memories, preferences, handwriting, even physiological responses. Which one is the real person? The one who weeps, the one who rages, the one who smiles politely in public? Or are all of them equally masks, flickering across a face that never existed? Even without disorder, your identity shifts endlessly. You speak differently to a lover than to a parent, differently at work than alone. You change your tone, your posture, even your thoughts, adapting to context. Which is the true you? The angry voice that mutters in traffic, or the careful politeness in a meeting? If both are you, then you are already many. If only one is you, then the others are lies. But which? Neuroscience fractures the illusion further. The brain is not a single unified machine. It is a patchwork of modules, each competing for dominance. Split brain experiments by Roger Sperry and Michael Gazzaniga revealed something terrifying. When the corpus callosum was severed, the two hemispheres behaved almost like separate minds, each capable of independent thought, even contradicting one another. If one skull can consume minds, how many fractured cells live inside yours right now, pretending to be one? Consider how easily identity can be rewritten. Total amnesia leaves the body intact but erases the story. New names, new roles, new loyalties can be imposed with frightening speed. Political regimes and cults exploit this malleability. People shift from friend to enemy, from loyalist to traitor, sometimes overnight. If yourself can be erased and replaced so quickly, how stable is it really? Even at the biological level, identity is porous. 90% of the cells in your body are not human. They are bacterial symbionts. Your genome is riddled with viral insertions, fragments of other life forms. Your consciousness depends on neurotransmitters generated partly by gut microbes. You are not one being but an ecosystem, a swarm pretending to be singular dot. And when you look at the continuity across time, the illusion collapses completely. The cells of your body replace themselves over years. The child you are no longer exists. Not a single atom remains. Yet you insist you are the same person. What thread connects the infant to the adult, other than a story whispered to yourself? In the dark? But the deepest fracture comes from physics. If time is not absolute, if the past and future are as real as the present, then the you that existed yesterday and the you that will exist tomorrow are equally present. Which one is the real you? If all versions exist, then your identity is not one but infinite. If none is privileged, then maybe none of them are real at all. So when you say, I, what is it you are pointing to? A shifting bundle of memories, most of them false. A fractured brain of competing modules. A colony of microbes. A continuity that doesn't exist. What remains of you once every mask, every layer, every illusion has been stripped away? You imagine that observation is passive, that to look at something is simply to see it as it already is. But the moment you gaze, you alter what you gaze upon. The act of observing is not neutral, it is interference. And in that interference, you will never escape yourself. Physics lays bare the trap. At the quantum level, particles exist as clouds of probabilities, not fixed states. It is only when observed that they collapse into something definite. The double-slit experiment demonstrates this most viciously. Fire electrons at a barrier, with two openings, and they form a wave-like interference pattern until you place a detector to watch them. Suddenly, the electrons behave like discrete particles. Your observation changes the outcome. You cannot step outside the experiment. The Copenhagen interpretation insists the observer is indispensable. Reality remains indeterminate until someone looks. But who is this observer? A human eye? A machine recording data? A conscious mind interpreting the numbers? The deeper you press, the more slippery it becomes. Perhaps reality doesn't exist independently at all, only as a co-creation with observation. If so, what you call the universe is not separate from you. It is fused to your act of looking. Psychology offers its mirror. The observer effect in human behavior, the Hawthorne effect, reveals that people change under surveillance. Workers perform differently when watched. Students answer differently when a researcher's pen hovers. Even your own thoughts mutate when you imagine being overheard. Who are you, really, when you know you are seen? And who are you when you believe you are invisible? Even memory is poisoned by the observer's hand. Each time you recall an event, you are not retrieving a recording. You are rewriting it, re-encoding it with distortions, until eventually the original event is lost. Observation does not preserve, it corrodes. Every act of looking back makes the memory less itself. In observing your past, you destroy it. History suffers the same fate. There is no neutral record. Every chronicler selects, filters, interprets. Even the most meticulous documentarian is bound by perspective, by cultural framing, by the blind spots of language. Observation does not capture history, it creates it. And once history is written, it masquerades as reality itself. But what was erased? What was twisted? Which lives are lost forever because no one looked at them? And you right now cannot escape. Your own observer. You do not perceive the world directly. Light strikes your eyes, sound vibrates your eardrums, chemicals stimulate your tongue and nose. These are translated into electrical signals, processed by neural architecture. You never touch reality, you only observe filtered signals. You are trapped behind your skull, imprisoned in subjective simulation. Neuroscience sharpens the cruelty. Studies of perception reveal how much of what you see is fabricated by your brain. Blind spots are filled in. Contradictions are smoothed over. Entire illusions can dominate your awareness, showing you vividly what does not exist. You are not observing the world. You are observing the brain's best guess at it. And the brain is often wrong. Consider Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. You cannot measure both the position and momentum of a particle with infinite precision. The very attempt to observe one obscures the other. Applied beyond physics, this principle metastasizes. The closer you observe one aspect of yourself or the world, the more everything else blurs. To know fully is to unknow everything else. You are trapped then in a recursive snare. To see is to distort, to measure is to obscure, to remember is to rewrite. You can never know the world as it is, because your observation is always changing. You can never know yourself as you are, because the act of looking already warps the image dot. So what remains? A universe that cannot be observed without changing, a self that cannot be seen without distortion, a reality that only exists in relation to your gaze. If you can never look at anything without altering it, then what have you ever truly seen? Every explanation seems to satisfy until you ask what underlies it. Then the ground falls away. You search for causes, for reasons, for origins, and every answer only points backward to another unanswered question. There is no bedrock. There is only the endless slide into regression. Philosophy has wrestled with this abyss for millennia. Aristotle imagined a chain of causes leading back to an unmoved mover. Thomas Aquinas sharpened it into the cosmological argument. Everything must have a cause, and the chain cannot be infinite. Therefore, there must be a first cause God. But why stop there? Who caused God? Why must the chain end at all? The supposed solution only shifts the gap one level higher, disguising ignorance with a name. Science performs the same theater. You ask, why does the apple fall? Gravity. But why gravity? Space-time. Curvature. Why space-time curvature? The stress-energy tensor. Why that? Quantum fields. Why quantum fields? A vacuum state. But what is vacuum, really? The silence that seethes with fluctuations, with particles popping in and out of existence, drawn from nothing. Why does nothing fluctuate? Why should there be laws at all, instead of lawlessness? You never reach the origin. You only peel back one layer to reveal another, and another, and another. Like a Russian doll, the universe opens into smaller and smaller containers, and yet never offers the final piece. The mind collapses under this recursion. In psychology, this is mirrored in self-reflection. You think about your thoughts. Then you think about the fact that you are thinking about your thoughts. Then you notice yourself noticing you're noticing. The loop expands endlessly reflexive until the original thought is lost in the spiral. Infinite regression is not abstract. It is the architecture of your very consciousness. Even art suffers it. M.C. Escher's drawings show hands drawing each other, stairs climbing into themselves, images that feed on their own images. Borges' stories imagine books within books, mirrors reflecting mirrors. You are seduced by the infinite loop because it hints at the bottomless, but in truth, it offers no ground at all. Dot theology collapses here as well. Any explanation that invokes an ultimate entity, principle, or law inevitably triggers the question, why that and not something else? To say, it just is to admit defeat, to bow before an unexplained given. Whether you call it God, the Big Bang, or the quantum vacuum, the abyss of regression remains. And history too spirals backward. Every war has a cause in the one before it. Every empire rises from the ashes of another. Every revolution is seeded by prior oppression. Trace it back far enough, and the line disappears into myth, into fragments, into silence. There is no first cause of human violence, only an infinite regression of blood. Even mathematics is not immune. Gigel's incompleteness theorems show that within any consistent formal system, there will be truths that cannot be proven within it. You cannot step outside the system to validate it without invoking another system, which itself requires validation, and so on without end. The foundation of logic itself is an infinite regress. And what of your identity? You say, I am myself. But what underlies that? Your memories. And what underlies your memories? Neural patterns. What underlies those? Biochemistry. What underlies? Biochemistry? Physics. What underlies physics? Laws. What underlies laws? Nothing you can answer. The you collapses into regression. Until there is no final you at all, the law of infinite regression is merciless. It guarantees that no explanation, no belief, no perception can ever reach finality. Every truth hides another beneath it, and that one hides another. You are condemned to climb a ladder that has no bottom rung, to chase a horizon that recedes as you approach. And in that endless chase, you must ask, if nothing can ever rest on ultimate ground, if every cause is only another effect, then have you ever known a single thing at all? Every fact you cling to, every measurement, every so-called certainty of science is haunted by a single intrusion, the observer. You imagine reality as existing independently, indifferent to your gaze, but every attempt to confirm it collapses back into the act of observation itself. You are not watching the universe. You are interfering with it. Quantum mechanics makes this unbearable truth unavoidable. In the famous double-slit experiment, electrons fired through two slits create an interference pattern, behaving like waves spread across possibilities. But the moment you observe which slit the electron passes through, the interference collapses into discrete particles. The act of watching rewrites the outcome. You do not see the world, you collapse it. Physicists tried to soften this with the Copenhagen interpretation. Particles exist in superposition until measured, then snap into one state. But this raises the monstrous question: measured by what? By a conscious observer? By any interaction? Where does the boundary lie between the unobserved and the observed? There is no agreement, only paradox. The problem multiplies. If the universe exists in indefinite states until observed, then what observed the universe before humans? Did the cosmos hang suspended, undefined, until the first eye opened to see? If consciousness is required, then your mind is not a passive passenger. It is a violent sculptor, hacking the infinite into something measurable. But if no consciousness is required, then observation dissolves into meaningless interactions, and you are once again left with recursion. What counts is the act that collapses possibility into reality. Psychology adds a darker echo. You do not perceive the world directly. Your brain filters, edits, and reconstructs it, filling gaps, discarding details, rewriting past perceptions to match new expectations. You never encounter raw reality. You encounter only the version processed through the machinery of your nervous system. Every time you look, you entrap yourself in the loop of your own perception. Even memory obeys the law of the observers. Trap. Studies in cognitive science reveal that every time you recall an event, you destabilize it. The act of remembering rewrites the memory, altering details, exaggerating some, erasing others. The more often you remember, the less true the memory becomes. To observe your past is to destroy it. History itself is rewritten by this trap. No account of events can exist without the perspective of the recorder, and every recorder is an observer, entangled in their own biases, limitations, and blind spots. There is no objective history. There are only collapsing narratives, distorted by the act of observation. Even in physics, Heisenberg's uncertainty principle reveals the observers. Trap is law. The more precisely you measure a particle's position, the less precisely you can measure its momentum. To observe one truth annihilates the possibility of fully observing another. There is no complete picture, only partial fragments forced by your interference. Consider what this means for identity. When you look inward, you think you are observing yourself, but the act of introspection alters the self you think you are observing. You cannot ever see your true self. only the shifting reflection distorted by the mirror of attention. The you believe in collapses under the gaze of the observer. You observing yourself destroys yourself. The observer's trap reveals that there may be no reality independent of the act of seeing. Or worse, that there is a reality, but you can never reach it, because to look is to alter. You are locked forever in a loop, both prisoner and jailer, collapsing the world with your gaze. And so the unbearable question lingers. If every observation corrupts what is observed, then have you ever truly seen anything at all? You think you wake up every morning into continuity, into a life that has been preserved across time. You think your memories stitch together a stable self, that yesterday is still attached to today. But memory is not preservation. Memory is recreation, a fragile dream rehearsed each time you recall it, disintegrating into something less and less like whatever really was. You are not waking into a preserved past. You are waking into a story you keep rewriting until the original is gone. Psychologists have proven this over and over again. Elizabeth Loftus's research on false memories shows how easily human beings can be made to believe events that never occurred. A few leading questions, a suggestive narrative, and people will confidently recall childhood trips that never happened, crimes they never committed, faces they never saw. Your memory is not a record. It is a suggestion machine, endlessly vulnerable to contamination. Even when you are alone, unmanipulated by others, your memories corrode themselves. Every act of remembering destabilizes the neural trace. Each recall reopens the memory, making it pliable, and reconsolidates it in altered form. To remember is to forget, to destroy, to replace. You cannot know how far the rot has spread into your recollections. What you call your past may be nothing but a sequence of corrupted copies. History operates the same way. Nations retell their origin myths so many times that the myths become more real than the events. Documents are lost, rewritten, forged, or destroyed until what remains is not the past, but the dream of the past. Consider the burning of the Library of Alexandria. So many lifetimes of accumulated knowledge annihilated, leaving gaps no one can fill. Or consider the shifting borders of empires, each redrawing maps and teaching their children new versions of who won, who ruled, who mattered. Every retelling is a forgetting. Science itself is vulnerable. Paradigms shift not because new truths are discovered, but because old frameworks collapse under contradictions and anomalies, and new stories are told to replace them. The geocentric model gave way to heliocentrism, not because people suddenly saw the truth, but because the narrative that Earth was central to the cosmos could no longer sustain itself. What you call scientific laws are only temporary scaffolds, forgotten dreams of order that will one day be dismantled. Even your nightly dreams blur into this law. How many do you actually remember upon waking? Within minutes, most dissolve, leaving you with fragments that feel real but crumble when probed. Dreams are not discarded, they are simply overwritten by the dream of waking life. But what if the same mechanism governs waking itself? What if each morning, the continuity you believe in is only a dream stitched together from fragments as artificial as the dreams you discard? Neuroscience offers no rescue. The hippocampus, the brain region that encodes new memories, is also the region most vulnerable to distortion. Trauma can erase entire spans of experience. Suggestion can implant them. Memory is not a vault. It is a hallucination rehearsed until believed. Consider the ship of Theseus once more. If every plank of a ship is replaced, is it the same ship? Your memories are planks. Each one rots, is rewritten, and is replaced. By the time you stand here, now, none of the original planks remain. You are the continuity of forgetting, a dream stitched together by absence. This law does not stop at the individual. Civilizations themselves forget. Whole cultures vanish, languages die, records erode. You look back at ancient ruins and call them mysteries, but they were once homes. Temples, markets, cities filled with ordinary lives now erased. The forgotten dream is not the exception. It is the default. Most of history is gone dot, so the law stands. You live not in the preservation of what was, but in the forgetting of it. Each moment you believe in your past, you are believing in something that has already been replaced. And the question, the one you cannot escape, is this: if all memory is corruption, then who exactly do you think you are remembering when you say yourself? You assume that to see is to know, that perception delivers truth. But perception is not a window. It is a prison cell whose bars are invisible because you have never looked beyond them. Everything you experience is filtered, compressed, distorted by biological machinery that was never designed to reveal reality, only to keep you alive long enough to reproduce. You are not perceiving the world. You are perceiving the narrow sliver your senses allow, a sliver curated for survival, not truth. The electromagnetic spectrum extends infinitely in both directions: radio waves, gamma rays, microwaves, ultraviolet, infrared, yet you see only a thin band between 400 and 700 nanometers. You call this color, but it is nothing but a small window cut into an endless wall of blindness. Bees see ultraviolet patterns invisible to you. Mantis shrimp perceive 16 channels of color where you perceive 3. Your blue is not universal. It is provincial, confined to your species' sensory cage. Sound is no different. You hear only between 20 and 20,000 hertz, a range so narrow it is laughable. Whales communicate at frequencies you cannot detect. Bats navigate through ultrasonic worlds you cannot imagine. Dogs hear whistles that to you are silence. Your world is not the world, it is your sensory cage. But it is worse than that. Even within your cage, your perception is not accurate, but constructed. The Muller-Lyer illusion, 2 lines of equal length appearing unequal, demonstrates how your brain invents geometry. The dress that appeared blue and black to some, and white and gold to others, shows how your visual system guesses at lighting, conditions, and invents colors. Optical illusions do not trick your brain. They reveal what it always does: fabricate a world. Physics deepens the prison. Heisenberg's uncertainty principle dictates that the more precisely you measure a particle's position, the less precisely you can know its momentum. At the quantum scale, the act of observation itself alters the state of what is observed. You cannot know reality as it is. You can only know reality as it behaves under the violence of measurement. Your observation is not passive, it is invasive, distorting, destructive. This cage is recursive. You cannot step outside your perception to confirm what lies beyond, because any attempt is still filtered through the same senses. You are like a prisoner born into a cell with no door, no cracks, no knowledge that a world exists outside. You mistake the cell for the whole. Even your thoughts are trapped. Language itself, the medium through which you interpret reality, cages you. The Sapir-Whorf hypothesis suggests that the structure of language constrains what you can think. Cultures with no word for blue do not perceive it as a distinct color. Your categories, your words, your thoughts are shaped by a linguistic prison you cannot see. Consider history again. Every record you have ever read, every account of what has happened, came through observers bound by their own cages. Biases, limitations, sensory distortions, all layered into the stories you take as fact. There is no pure record. There is only perception written down as if it were truth. And still deeper, what you call you is just another observer. The self is the brain observing itself. But how can an organ see itself clearly while using the very distortions it cannot escape? You think you know yourself, But self-knowledge is simply another hallucination trapped in the cage of perception. Imagine if your senses were tuned differently, if you saw X-rays, if you heard infrasound, if you smelled like a bloodhound, your world would be unrecognizable. Your reality would be unmade and remade. And yet, it would still only be another cage, another curated sliver, another filtered hallucination mistaken for truth. The law is merciless. You cannot escape the observer's cage. Every observation is a distortion. Every perception is a lie. And so the question is this: if all you ever know is the prison of perception, how can you ever be sure there is anything beyond the cage at all? You believe your past is secure, that your memories form a continuous thread, that what you recall is what truly happened. But memory is not a record, it is a weapon your mind turns against you. Every recollection you hold with certainty is a reconstruction, a fragile fabrication, assembled anew each time you retrieve it. You are not remembering, you are rewriting, and the rewriting never ends. Psychologists Elizabeth Loftus and John Palmer demonstrated this with brutal clarity. In their 1974 study, participants watched footage of a car accident. When asked how fast the cars were going when they smashed versus when they contacted, estimates varied drastically. A single word planted false speed, false violence, false memory. Later, when asked whether they had seen broken glass, many swore they had, even though none existed. One word altered history in their minds. This malleability is not a glitch. It is the rule. Your brain does not store experiences like files. It stores fragments, impressions, suggestions. Each time you remember, you pull those fragments into the present and assemble them into a story that feels consistent. But the act of recalling overwrites the memory itself, contaminating it with your current state of mind, your current emotions, your current needs. You are always vandalizing your past. Consider the lost in the mall experiment. Loftus implanted false childhood memories by merely suggesting that participants had once been lost as children. A quarter of them came to remember the event, complete with vivid details. They remembered fear, stores, strangers. None of it had happened. But to them, the memory was real. Your memories betray you, not only by invention, but by erasure. Childhood amnesia hides your earliest years, not because nothing happened, but because the brain discards those moments, as if they never existed. Trauma can do the same. Whole spans of life dissolved into blackness. And even without trauma, ordinary forgetting quietly amputates huge portions of your existence. Where are the details of yesterday, last week, last year? Gone, stripped away, leaving only fragments. Neuroscience has shown that memory is distributed, not centralized. Different aspects of a single moment, sights, sounds, emotions, are stored across different brain regions. To remember requires the brain to reassemble these fragments into something coherent. But coherence is not truth. Coherence is survival. You remember not what happened, but what your brain can piece together in a way that maintains your sense of continuity. And continuity is itself a lie. The self you were yesterday is not the self you are now, but memory stitches the fragments into a story of I. That story is not preserved. It is fabricated in real time. Without memory's betrayal, you would see yourself for what you are. A discontinuous series of moments, a procession of strangers pretending to be one. History repeats the betrayal at scale. National myths, collective memories, are reconstructed, revised, rewritten by those in power. Textbooks erase atrocities, amplify victories, distort the past to stabilize the present. Entire nations live inside false memory. What you call history is just collective amnesia punctuated by propaganda. The consequence is unbearable. There is no anger. What you remember of your childhood, of your loves, of your griefs, None of it can be trusted. Memory does not preserve. It invents. Memory does not testify. It deceives. And if every recollection is mutable, if every memory can be reshaped or erased, what does it mean to say you have a past at all? You imagine that time flows forward, that each moment passes once and is gone forever. But the logic of physics, the silence of mathematics, and the weight of philosophy suggests something darker. Everything that happens has already happened an infinite number of times and will happen again an infinite number more. You are not moving through time. You are trapped in a loop that has no beginning and no end. Friedrich Nietzsche named it eternal recurrence. He asked you to imagine that every detail of your life, every word you've spoken, every humiliation you've endured, every quiet betrayal and hidden shame would return exactly as it was, over and over, forever. Not a metaphor, not a poetic exaggeration, but the literal recurrence of all things. Could you endure it? Could you bear to relive the same failures endlessly, with no possibility of escape? Physics does not spare you. Consider the Poincare recurrence theorem. In a closed system with finite energy, given infinite time, every possible state will recur. Your life, your actions, your precise arrangement of atoms will reassemble again and again. The universe itself is condemned to repetition. You think you are unique, but uniqueness collapses under infinity. The arrow of time feels like a safeguard, but entropy, the law that guarantees disorder, does not forbid repetition. It only stretches the recurrence out across spans so vast that you cannot imagine them. The return is not prevented, only delayed. The infinite expanse of possibility folds back on itself, swallowing novelty, recycling every motion you mistake for progress. Even in the human mind, repetition gnaws. Obsessive thoughts cycle endlessly. Traumas replay themselves unbidden in flashbacks and dreams. Freud called this repetition compulsion. The mind reenacts pain in an endless loop, compelled to restage the trauma as though trying to master it, yet never escaping it. The psyche is not linear, it circles, traps you in its orbit. History echoes this same curse. Empires rise, empires fall. Wars erupt under different banners, repeating the same pattern of conquest, atrocity, collapse. Civilizations recycle myths of golden ages and apocalypses, as if the human species is condemned to repeat its errors endlessly. The saying, history repeats itself, is not cynical humor. It is a law written in blood. Consider how déjà vu unsettles you. The uncanny sensation that you have already lived this moment before, that the present is a repetition of something buried in memory. Neuroscience explains it as a misfiring, a glitch in temporal processing, but the feeling points to something deeper, the suspicion that your life is not unfolding, but replaying, that you are trapped in a recording, not in an unfolding present. If recurrence is law, then freedom dissolves. Choice becomes illusion. You are not deciding anything. You are replaying what has already been decided an infinite number of times. Every path you think you might take has already been taken. Every possible outcome has already been exhausted. You are not living, you are reciting. And what could be more horrifying than this? That not only will you suffer again, but you already have. That your shame, your despair, your loneliness have already unfolded across countless recurrences, each one indistinguishable from this one. That every scream you have ever given has already echoed across eternity, looping endlessly. If the universe is condemned to infinite repetition, if your life is not a singular story, but a cycle already played, what does it mean to speak of tomorrow at all? You have never once met yourself. Every encounter you've had, every word you've spoken, every glance in the mirror, none of it has been with the real you. There is no real you. What you present to the world, and even what you present to yourself, is a mask. And that mask changes depending on who is looking. Psychology makes this unbearable clear. Irving Goffman describes social life as theater. You play roles, you wear costumes, you adjust your tone and gestures for each stage. With family, you wear one mask. With friends, another. With strangers, a different one still. The performance feels natural, but it is not you. It is the necessity of survival, the conditioned dance of adaptation. Carl Jung warned of the persona, the mask of identity you show to the world. But beneath it, the unconscious swells with the shadow, the parts of you denied, unacknowledged, hidden even from yourself. The more you cling to the mask, the more grotesque the shadow becomes. And you cannot exist without both. Modern neuroscience deepens the fracture. The self you think you are is scattered across brain regions, stitched together only in the instant of awareness. Your memories are not reliable records, they are reconstructions, edited each time you recall them. Your sense of identity is not a solid object, it is a fragile narrative, constantly revised. You are not one thing. You are an endless assembly of masks, rearranged by circumstance. And if you doubt this, ask yourself, who are you when no one is watching? Who are you in dreams, when identity slips its grip? Who are you when memory falters? Are you the same person you were 10 years ago? Or is that one already dead, replaced by another mask pretending to continuity? Even history wears masks. Nations reinvent their origins, erase atrocities, polish their masks for legitimacy. Entire centuries wear false faces, rewriting themselves so the present will appear coherent. But beneath the mask, the blood remains. Philosophy, too, strips away the comfort. Jean-Paul Sartre described the nausea of realizing that existence precedes essence, that you are not born with a fixed self, only thrown into the world, forced to construct meaning. But every construction is a mask, an attempt to cover the void. Behind it, there is nothing. Think of the faces you scroll past on screens, smiling, curated, filtered, each one a mask carefully assembled. You do not know these people. You do not even know yourself. And yet you perform for them, and they perform for you, each mask gazing at the other, never touching what lies beneath. But here is the collapse. If the mask is all there is, then what does it mean to speak of authenticity? What could real even mean if every version of you is a performance, if every role is just another layer, if even the thought I am wearing a mask is itself another mask? When you look in the mirror tonight, and the glass reflects your face back at you, how will you know that it is not just another mask, staring back, hollow and unblinking? You cling to memory as though it is the anchor of identity. You believe you are the sum of what has happened to you, that your recollections are proof you were there, that they bear witness to the unbroken continuity of your life. But memory is the most dangerous illusion of all. Psychology has proven it again and again. Elizabeth Loftus demonstrated how malleable memory is. People can be led to remember crimes they never committed, events that never happened, childhood scenes entirely fabricated. Suggestion rewires recollection, and once implanted, the false memory feels as real as any true one, which means true is already compromised. Every time you remember, you are not retrieving a fixed recording. You are reconstructing, reassembling fragments, filling in gaps with invention. And each reconstruction overwrites the old one. The act of remembering destroys the memory, replacing it with something slightly altered. Memory is not an archive. It is a corruption that accumulates. With every glance backward, neuroscience shows the fragility of this process. Memories live not in one place, but across neural networks, dependent on patterns of activation, vulnerable to decay, interference, and reconsolidation. Even the most intimate moments, the face of your mother, the sound of your first heartbreak, The smell of a childhood room are unstable signals that degrade with each attempt to hold them. History works no differently. What you call history is not a record of the past, but the memory of a culture, rewritten, revised, erased. Monuments enshrine one version of memory while burning another. Archives are curated. Documents are lost or forged. Every nation's history is just collective false memory, repeated until it hardens into myth. Philosophy sinks the knife deeper. Friedrich Nietzsche wrote of monumental history, how societies construct usable pasts to give themselves continuity. He warned that remembering too much becomes a sickness, but forgetting is equally fatal. Both are lies. Both destroy. And yet you need them to go on pretending there is a story. But what if your own life is no different? You believe you were a child, then a teenager, then an adult. You believe there was a path, a sequence of cells strung together. But the chain is broken at every link. There is no proof you were the same person who lived those earlier moments. There is no proof those moments happened at all, beyond a reconstruction you cannot verify. Consider the unsettling reality. The brain can be damaged, and whole decades vanish. People live without memory, and yet they continue to exist. Which means memory is not necessary for being. It is only necessary for the illusion of being continuous. And if memory is a lie, then who are you? Are you the one who remembers falsely, or the one who remembers nothing? What if the most important events of your life never happened at all, except as echoes implanted by repetition, by suggestion, by the flawed machinery of recall? Tonight, when you close your eyes, you will try to summon a moment from your past, your first kiss, your first wound, the sound of your father's voice, and you will feel certain it is real. But how will you ever know that what you are touching is not just the newest lie your mind has told itself in order to keep the story intact? You believe matter is solid, that when you hold a stone in your hand, you are grasping something definite, indivisible, complete. But the history of science is a history of watching solidity dissolve into smaller and smaller ghosts. The ancient Greeks imagined the atomos, uncuttable, as the smallest piece of matter, a hard, eternal bead from which all else was made. For centuries, this was enough. But then the atom was cut, and inside it were electrons, protons, neutrons. Stability shattered again. Then those particles fractured into quarks, and even quarks. Now our not final string theory suggests they may be vibrations of something smaller still. No matter how far you peer down, there is always another layer, another abyss opening beneath what you thought was fundamental. This is the law of infinite division. There is no bottom. Every boundary is provisional, every unit temporary. The more powerful your microscope, the more fragile your definitions become. The floor of reality keeps crumbling. Zeno's paradox haunts this as well. To cross a room, you must first go halfway, then half of that, then half again, ad infinitum. Motion itself should be impossible, trapped in an infinite regress of divisions. And yet you walk. The paradox is not solved. It is ignored. You are an animal who survives by pretending infinities don't matter, but the infinities are always there. In mathematics, the continuum of real numbers means that between any 2 points, no matter how close, there are infinitely many others. Between 0 and 1 lies an unending ocean of decimals. Infinity hides inside the finite, poisoning every attempt at simplicity. Even your body follows this law. Cells split, and inside cells are molecules, and inside molecules atoms, and inside atoms the endless regress of substructure. You cannot point to yourself and say, "This is where I end." Every scale erodes into another dot. The mind revolts against this. You want a foundation, something irreducible, a final particle you can hold in your imagination. But what if there is no end? What if existence is nothing but an infinite unraveling, with no first piece and no last? And if matter never resolves into solidity, then what are you holding when you grip the stone? Nothing but probabilities, vibrations, divisions without end. Your hand passes through infinities, touching nothing, yet convinced it grasps something real. So when you press your palm against your own chest, when you swear you feel your own solidity, what are you actually touching? Are you certain there? Is even a you there at all, or only endless division falling forever? You imagine progress, order, the forward motion of civilization, as if history itself is building toward coherence. But physics whispers a different law, one that does not care about your hopes. Entropy. Entropy is the measure of disorder in a system. Left alone, order always decays. A castle becomes rubble. A body becomes dust. Heat dissipates until nothing remains but uniform emptiness. You can delay it, you can fight it, but you cannot escape it. The second law of thermodynamics is not just a technicality of physics. It is the hidden pulse of time itself. Time moves in only one direction because entropy always increases. A shattered glass never leaps back into your hand. A burned log never reassembles into wood. The arrow of time is carved by disorder, not by progress. The future is defined not by possibility, but by loss. You live within this current every moment. Your cells replicate with errors. Your brain accumulates noise. Your memories decay into fragments. Even your thoughts, the very act of remembering, are entropic. What you recall today is not what you recalled yesterday. Each recollection erases itself, like copying a tape until the sound blurs. Civilizations follow the same trajectory. Empires rise with precision and fall into chaos. Rome, the Aztecs, the Soviet Union, all swallowed by entropy. Order takes centuries to construct, yet collapse requires only a crack in the system, and the crack always comes. Entropy does not care about justice, beauty, or meaning. It consumes everything indiscriminately. The stars themselves burn out. The universe races toward heat death, a state in which energy is evenly distributed and nothing new can ever happen again. No motion, no difference, no life. Eternal stillness. And you, too, are trapped in this unraveling. Your heart beats toward disorder. Your brain will dissolve into static. Even your atoms will one day drift apart into the vast thermodynamic silence. The law is not negotiable. The unsettling truth is that what you call life is merely a brief, local rebellion against entropy. You are a pattern temporarily resisting collapse, a whirlpool in the river of decay. But the river always wins. The whirlpool vanishes, the water moves on, and no trace remains of the temporary shape you once were. So when you clean your house, organize your files, plan your future, you are not building permanence. You are sweeping back the tide for a moment, pretending the current does not exist. You fight entropy with rituals of order, but the law is patient, and it never loses. And here is the darkest question. If time itself is nothing but the unfolding of entropy, then what is the point of memory, of achievement, of existence? If everything you do, everything you are, will dissolve into uniform heat, then what remains of you when the last trace of order is gone? You have been told your mind is connected, that you are part of a society, a family, a network of meaning. Yet beneath every interaction, beneath every gesture, is the same brutal fact. You are sealed inside your own consciousness. No one has ever entered your mind. No one ever will. Every word you speak, every signal you send, must cross the abyss of translation. You say love, and another person imagines something built from their own memories, not yours. You say pain, and they think of their wounds, not your bleeding. Even if they nod in recognition, Their recognition is a mirror turned inward, not a bridge outward. This is the law of isolation. Your inner world is inaccessible, a locked chamber without doors. You could scream every detail of your suffering and still never make another person feel precisely what you feel. You could confess every secret of your joy, and still they would not touch the exact shape of it. The most intimate connection remains an approximation. Philosophers call this the problem of other minds. How do you know anyone else is conscious? At all? You assume they are because they behave as you do, because they speak, because they act in ways familiar. But behavior is not proof. A machine can imitate. A corpse can twitch. An actor can smile while hating. You are forced, then, to live inside a prison of assumption. You look at your parents, your lover, your children, and you gamble on the belief that they are conscious as you are, but you can never verify it. Every "yes, I understand" they speak is only a sound, not a transmission of their interior dot. And what does it mean for history, for culture, for science, if no mind has ever truly touched another? Every book you read is a fossil of thought. Ink pressed onto paper, symbols meant to trigger echoes inside your head. But the original thought is gone, unrecoverable. Plato's words are not Plato's mind. They are shadows cast on your own cave wall. Psychology confirms the fracture. Experiments on memory reveal that even you cannot access your own mind with accuracy. Each recollection you summon is distorted, colored by your present mood, contaminated by suggestion. You are estranged from your own past, and if you cannot access yourself clearly, how could you ever access another? This isolation extends into science. When neuroscientists scan a brain, they see patterns of activity, electrical storms, blood flows. But they cannot see the redness of red, the ache of grief, the sweetness of relief. The qualia, the raw feel of consciousness, remain invisible. You live in a world where the most real part of experience cannot be measured, proven, or shared. And so you begin to suspect, perhaps the people around you are only elaborate machines, masks worn by the void. Perhaps you are the only conscious entity in existence, a solitary witness trapped in a theater of echoes. Solipsism is not a philosophy of arrogance. It is the unavoidable consequence of this law of isolation. Even your language betrays you. You say "we," but the word is only an arrangement of I's. You say humanity, but what you mean is billions of isolated observers, each sealed in their own skull, never able to breach the barrier. There is no true unity, only synchronized solitudes. History becomes unbearable when seen through this lens. Every tragedy, wars, genocides, betrayals unfolded because one isolated mind could not truly enter another. Misunderstandings metastasize into slaughter because empathy is never perfect, never complete. Compassion is only an approximation, a shadow of what another might feel. An approximation, when stretched across nations, becomes collapse. Even your most intimate moments confirm the law. You kiss someone and hope they feel what you feel. You confess love and hope the word means the same thing in their mouth. You grieve and hope your tears are recognized. But deep down, you know they are guessing, interpreting, constructing an image from their own isolated world. They are not inside yours, and never will be. What you call loneliness is not the absence of company. It is the recognition of this unbridgeable gulf. It is the quiet terror of realizing you are fundamentally alone, not because people have abandoned you, but because no one could ever truly arrive. And if every life is lived in solitary confinement, then what is society but a performance of shared meaning, a fragile theater where actors pretend they understand one another? What is morality but an attempt to legislate behavior across minds that can never truly meet? What is history but the illusion of collective experience, when in fact every moment was lived alone? You listen now, reading these words, thinking I am inside your head. But even here, in this most intimate act of writing and reading, the gulf remains. I cannot transmit my mind to you. I can only leave marks for you to misinterpret. You are not hearing me. You are hearing yourself, filtered through me. And so the question hangs, unbearable. If no consciousness can ever truly touch another, if every life is sealed in its own cell, then what is the point of love, of language, of history itself, when all of it dissolves into solitary echoes in an empty hall? Every principle you believe, every structure you trust, carries within it the seed of its own undoing. What begins as truth ends as contradiction. What starts as order bends toward chaos. Every law, whether physical, social, or moral, eventually reverses itself. This is not accident. It is inevitability. You see it in morality. The command to protect becomes the justification for violence. Nations build armies in the name of peace, until peace itself becomes indistinguishable from war. Revolutions rise to overthrow tyranny, only to replace it with new tyrannies. Every ideal mutates into its opposite the moment it gains power. You see it in history. Empires expand in the name of progress, then collapse under the weight of their fear. Progress. Rome civilized the lands it conquered, then drowned in its own decadence. The Soviet Union sought equality, then constructed gulags. The United States declared freedom while building chains. Every civilization builds its monument to justice and watches it turn to ash. You see it in science. Every discovery reveals the limits of discovery. Newton gave us laws of motion that predicted the planets, only for Einstein to prove them incomplete. Einstein gave us relativity, only for quantum mechanics to tear relativity apart. Each truth, once worshipped, becomes the stepping stone to its own destruction. The closer you come to certainty, the faster it dissolves. Even language reverses. Words born to illuminate become weapons of confusion. Freedom becomes a slogan for control. Truth, a mask for propaganda. Justice, a tool for punishment. The more a word is used, the more it drifts from its origin, until it means the opposite of what it once meant. At the personal level, the law of reversal is even more brutal. Love curdles into resentment. Ambition turns to exhaustion. Faith collapses into doubt. Every joy carries the certainty of its decay. Every triumph seeds its defeat. The honeymoon becomes the divorce. The child becomes the stranger. The body becomes the coffin. You live every day knowing that your current moment will one day betray you. The law of reversal is not only psychological, it is built into the physics of existence. Consider entropy. Every act of creation increases disorder elsewhere. A flame that warms you consumes wood to ash. A city that grows produces waste to poison itself. Life itself is the slow reversal of order into decay. No matter how carefully you build, the structure collapses in time. Even identity is not spared. You tell yourself you are one person, coherent and stable. Yet the more closely you examine, the more fractured you appear. You are both victim and perpetrator, saint and monster, builder and destroyer. Every quality you cling to has its shadow, and the shadow grows with the light. You cannot have courage without fear, love without hate, meaning without despair. 2. Affirm one is to secretly nourish the other. This law is recursive. Attempts to escape it only accelerate it. A man terrified of betrayal becomes controlling, and in his control ensures betrayal. A society that fears collapse builds fortifications, and in building them strangles itself. A thinker who fears paradox constructs a system, and the system becomes the deepest paradox of all. Resistance is the mechanism of reversal. The ancient Greeks understood this when they spoke of hubris and nemesis. Every act of pride calls forth its punishment. Every excess generates its counterweight. But you no longer believe in gods to mete out justice. Instead, you live under a universe where reversal is mechanical, blind, inevitable. Gravity does not forgive, entropy does not forget, time does not pause. And yet there is a deeper cruelty. The law of reversal means not only that everything turns into its opposite, but that you can never know when. At what moment does love sour? At what instant does progress become decay? At what second does freedom become slavery? There is no warning. You cross the line before you recognize the line exists. This is why history feels cyclical. Not because time repeats, but because reversal is constant. Every age believes it has escaped the errors of the last, only to repeat them in inverted form. Every generation mocks its parents' blindness and walks the same path with new costumes. The wheel of history is not circular. It is a spiral tightening toward collapse. And what of you, reader? Even now, as you think you grasp this law, the grasp is already slipping. Your understanding will reverse into misunderstanding. Your certainty will become doubt. These words, which feel like clarity, will one day feel like noise. The act of comprehension carries its own decay, for the more you hold, the faster it rots dot, so you begin to wonder, is the universe not a set of laws, but only one, the law of reversal? Is everything you believe destined to become its opposite? If so, then what is truth but the moment before contradiction? What is meaning but the pause before collapse? And the final cruelty, if every law reverses, then even this one will, which means the law of reversal will one day cease. But if it ceases, then laws may remain stable. And if laws remain stable, the law of reversal returns. You are trapped in an oscillation without escape, condemned to watch truth and falsehood endlessly trade masks. Everything you see, everything you hear, everything you believe, none of it is the thing itself. It is only the mask of the person, the mask of the institution, the mask of reality. You live inside theater, but you call it life. A mask is not simply a disguise. It is the structure of perception itself. Your friend smiles mask. Your enemy scowls mask. The government waves a flag mask. The church raises a cross mask. Behind each, the true face is not hidden but absent. The mask is all there is. Consider politics. A politician speaks of service, of duty, of sacrifice. Yet the words are only masks for power. Consider corporations. They speak of innovation and community, while masking extraction and exploitation. Consider religion. The prayers and hymns are masks for authority. You bow not to God, but to the mask of God constructed by men. And yet the mask does not only cover, it creates. When enough people treat the mask as real, it becomes real. Money is paper, yet because you agree to its mask, it enslaves you. Laws are ink, yet because you bow to their mask, they chain you. Nations are borders, yet because you die for their mask, they kill you. The mask is stronger than the truth, because truth requires proof, but masks require only belief. Even in personal life, the mask dominates. You have never shown your true face, because there is no true face to show. At work, you wear the mask of competence. At home, the mask of love. With friends, the mask of humor. Alone, you think you remove them, but even then you wear the mask of yourself. The moment you try to see behind the mask, you discover only another. Masks reproduce endlessly. Every label you accept becomes another mask. Citizen, believer. Skeptic, rebel, victim, hero, villain. Each identity is a costume stitched from expectation. You believe you are free when you choose a new mask, but freedom itself is only the most convincing mask of all. Even nature wears masks. The sky appears blue, but that is scattering, not truth. The solid ground beneath you is atoms vibrating in empty space. Time appears linear, but quantum mechanics whispers otherwise. The entire universe is a carnival of masks, layered so deeply that the absence of a mask can never be found. Masks have one function: to hide absence. For what lies beneath the mask is not a hidden reality, but void. There is no essence, only presentation. A man insists he is strong until he fails, then insists he is wise. A nation insists it is just until it falls, then insists it was misunderstood. The mask shifts not to reveal truth, but to prevent you from noticing the lack of truth. This is why masks are irresistible. They promise coherence in a world of chaos. You cling to them because to discard them would mean facing the abyss, that there is no real face, no final meaning, no true law. The mask is a mercy, even as it is a lie. But mercy does not mean safety. Masks control you. You no longer worship gods, you worship their masks. You no longer trust justice, you trust its mask. You no longer love people, you love the mask they perform for you. Strip away the mask, and relationships collapse. Institutions dissolve, society disintegrates, which is why masks can never be removed. Only replace dot, and so the greatest cruelty. Masks devour even themselves. When one mask loses power, another rises in its place. The mask of freedom becomes the mask of security. The mask of truth becomes the mask of narrative. The mask of progress becomes the mask of collapse. The theater changes costumes, but the stage remains the same. You may imagine resistance. You may say, I will live without masks. But to live without masks is to live without recognition. To live without recognition is to live as nothing. And to live as nothing is indistinguishable from death. So you choose masks, not because they are true, but because the alternative is annihilation, the final paradox. If all you have ever seen are masks, then perhaps the mask is the truth. Perhaps the performance is not the cover, but the essence. Perhaps there is no actor behind the costume, no face behind the mask. Perhaps you are only the shifting collection of masks you have worn, and nothing more. But if that is so, then what happens when the mask you wear cracks? What happens when the nation collapses, the God is questioned, the friend betrays, the self dissolves? In that moment, you face the horror the mask breaks, but nothing waits beneath. Only emptiness stares back, and in that silence, you finally see you are not the one who wears the mask. You are the mask itself. Silence is not the absence of sound. It is the presence of everything you refuse to hear. You are told silence is peaceful, that it is the gap between noises, that it is a void to be filled. But that is the mask of silence. Real silence is unbearable. It is not empty. It is overflowing. It is the accumulation of every word unsaid, every scream swallowed, every truth smothered. Listen carefully. What you call quiet is never silent. The room hums with electricity. Your ears hiss with blood. The world buzzes with distant movement. Absolute silence exists nowhere in your daily life. You fear it because you know if you are ever to hear it, you would not survive it, because real silence is not acoustic. It is existential. It is the silence of ignored injustice, the silence of the oppressed whose voices were buried, the silence of your own thoughts you drown in noise. Silence is the archive of everything erased, and in that archive, the weight is infinite. Consider history. Empires rise, fall, and collapse into silence. Their monuments crumble, their languages vanish, their names rot. But that silence is not absence, it is compression. Every unrecorded life is pressed into the silent earth. The silence of history is not empty, but suffocating, because within it echo the ghosts of billions who will never be remembered. Consider society. The silences between people are louder than their words. The silence after a betrayal. The silence before a confession. The silence in a courtroom before judgment is read. These silences are not blank, they are charged. They carry terror, anticipation, death. You call them awkward pauses, but they are moments when truth tries to erupt and is strangled. Even nature obeys silence. In the forest, silence is not peace, but warning. The silence of birds means predator. The silence of the wind means storm. Silence is never neutral. It always signals the presence of something unspeakable. Now turn inward. The silence within you is deeper still. Every night, you bury yourself in noise music, conversation, distraction, because silence forces you into confrontation with yourself. And what you find, there is not rest, but fracture. The silence reminds you that you are not whole, that your life is stitched together by stories you repeat to avoid collapse. Silence does not comfort. It corrodes. Think of solitary confinement, where silence becomes torture. Think of the abandoned, where silence becomes proof of rejection. Think of grief, where silence follows the funeral more painfully than any speech. Silence is the true weapon of suffering, sharper than words, heavier than screams. And yet, like masked silence, is not only hiding, it creates. Silence shapes reality more than sound ever could. The silence of the powerful sustains corruption. The silence of the bystander sustains violence. The silence of the oppressed sustains their chains. Every atrocity requires not only the voice of the oppressor, but the silence of the witness. This is why silence terrifies, because it reveals complicity. When you hear silence, you are hearing your own failure to speak. You realize that by remaining silent, you too have upheld the systems you claim to despise. Silence is not neutral. It is an act. And so the paradox. Silence is violence, but silence is also survival. The oppressed remain silent because speech would kill them. The hunted remain silent because noise would expose them. The traumatized remain silent because memory would destroy them. Silence both preserves life and poisons it. Even death itself is silence. The silence of the grave is the final silence, but not because nothing remains. What remains is everything left unsaid. Every secret, every unfinished sentence, every withheld truth accumulates in the silence of the dead. Cemeteries are not quiet, they are thunderous with all the words never spoken. If silence is everywhere, if it cannot be escaped, then the question becomes, how do you live within it? You cannot destroy silence. To speak is only to create a new silence elsewhere. You cannot master it. To listen is only to notice its weight more deeply. The law of silence is inescapable. Everything ends in it, and here lies the deepest terror. When the universe ends, when the last star dies, when the last voice fades, there will not be sound. There will not be light. There will not be memory. Only silence. But this silence will not be absence. It will be presence. It will contain everything that ever was, compressed into the single endless moment of nothing. So do not fool yourself into thinking silence is peace. It is not serenity. It is not calm. It is the most oppressive force that exists. Every mask ends in silence. Every law ends in silence. Every truth ends in silence. And you already know this. Because in your quietest moments, when you stop moving, when you stop distracting, when you finally listen, silence whispers the one truth you cannot bear. You are not waiting for silence. Silence is waiting for you. The mirror does not reflect you. It reflects the lie you have agreed to recognize as yourself. You stand before it and believe that what you see is evidence, that the image corresponds to reality. But the mirror is not passive. It edits, it distorts, it frames. It presents a surface illusion that convinces you you are whole, when in fact you are fragmented. Think carefully. A mirror never shows the truth. It inverts everything. Left becomes right. Depth collapses into flatness. Your face, which feels three-dimensional, breathing, warm, is turned into a cold sheet of light. What you see is not you, but a reversal, a counterfeit, a mask crafted by glass and silver. You trust this illusion because you crave confirmation that you exist. And yet the mirror is not only a liar, it is also a predator. People speak of mirrors as portals, but the truth is worse. Mirrors are prisons. Every time you look into one, you feed it. You pour your recognition into it. You reinforce its lie until it becomes stronger than you. You are no longer sure if you exist outside its reflection. Consider history. Ancient cultures feared mirrors because they understood the danger. They believed reflections could trap souls, that mirrors could steal essence. You dismiss this as superstition, but it reveals a deeper truth. The mirror is not neutral. To reflect is to capture, and to capture is to claim. Every time you look, the mirror captures a piece of you. Consider psychology. People who stare too long into a mirror experience the strange face illusion. Their reflection begins to shift eyes. Darken, skin warps, features melt into strangers. The mind cannot endure its own image without distortion. The mirror reveals that the self is unstable, that identity is a fragile hallucination. The mirror is not the only surface. Screens, photographs, videos, all are mirrors. Each one captures you, freezes you, presents you as something other than what you are. You begin to act for these mirrors. You smile for cameras. You adjust your posture for reflections in windows. You are trained by mirrors to perform until you no longer know who you are without one. And here lies the paradox. Without mirrors, you would not know your own face. Without reflection, you would never recognize yourself at all. Mirrors create identity, but in doing so, they imprison it. You are dependent on their lies to sustain your sense of existence. But the law of the mirror goes deeper. It is not just about surfaces of glass. It governs human interaction itself. Every person you meet is a mirror. Their reactions to you shape your image of yourself. Their judgments, their silences, their admiration, all of it reflects back. An identity you did not choose. You become the sum of these mirrors. Without them, you dissolve. This is why rejection wounds so deeply. A mirror has shattered, and with it, a part of you vanishes. This is why love intoxicates. A mirror returns. An image of you more radiant than you believed possible. This is why betrayal devastates. The mirror you trusted was false, and you realize your identity was built on deception. The mirror's cruelty is that it always withholds something. You will never see your true face. You will never hear your true voice. Every attempt to know yourself is mediated by distortion. You are forever trapped outside yourself, condemned to trust reflections you cannot verify. Now extend this law to the universe. Scientists point mirrors at the sky telescopes that capture light from ancient stars. But what do they see? Not the stars themselves, but their dead reflections, millions of years old. Every cosmic image is a mirror of the past. The universe you believe you know is only reflection, never substance. The mirror law insists nothing is seen as it is. Everything is inverted, delayed, distorted. Even your memories are mirrors, reshaped each time you recall them. Even your identity is a mirror, refracted through the perception of others. There is no direct truth, only mirrors, endlessly facing mirrors, infinite regress. And this leads to the darkest truth. The mirror is watching you. Every time you look, it records not just your image, but your fear, your longing, your insecurity. It knows what you search for when you gaze into it. The mirror remembers. That is why prolonged staring breaks the illusion, because the mirror begins to stare back. The horror is not that the mirror lies. The horror is that it reveals too much. It shows you how fragile your existence is, how dependent you are on confirmation, how empty you feel without recognition. The mirror does not trap your soul. It reminds you that you never possessed one to begin with. And when the universe collapses, when silence consumes everything, mirrors will remain. Not because glass will survive, but because reflection itself cannot die. Every action, every thought, every life is mirrored into eternity. The law of the mirror ensures that nothing disappears. Everything is reflected endlessly, whether you want it or not. So the next time you face a mirror, do not ask, "What do I look like?" Ask instead, "Who is looking back?" Because the reflection you see is not your prisoner. It is your replacement. And it is patient. One day, when the silence comes, the mirrors will no longer need you to feed them. They will open, and everything you thought was reflection will step through, leaving you behind. The law of the mirror is final. You never see yourself. You only see what will one day replace you. Everything hungers, not metaphorically, not poetically literally. Hunger is not a biological accident or a quirk of survival. It is the fundamental engine of the universe. Before there was life, before there were stars, before there was even time, there was hunger, an emptiness that demanded to be filled, a vacuum that pulled existence into itself. Creation itself was not an act of generosity. It was an act of feeding. Think of it. Every particle pulls at every other particle. Gravity itself is hunger. Space curves not because it must, but because it wants. The void swallows light, matter. Entire galaxies, through the mouths we call black holes. Do not mistake them for objects. They are wounds that never close. Open mouths that will devour until the last photon is gone. Now consider life. From the smallest bacterium to the largest predator, to the machines we build, everything consumes. Even plants, worshipped as self-sufficient, are liars. They eat light, they drink soil, they inhale death and exhale life. The cycle is nothing more than a chain of mouths, each swallowing another endlessly. Hunger is not an obstacle to life. It is the definition of life. And yet hunger does not stop at the physical. It infects the mind. You hunger for recognition, for power, for love. You consume approval, status, meaning. The human heart is an endless stomach that can never be filled. You can pile wealth, worship, companionship into it, and still it gnaws. Why? Because hunger is not designed to end. It is designed to expand. Consider desire. Every pleasure fades because hunger insists on returning. The meal satisfies only until the next pang. The lover's embrace burns out into longing again. The victory rots into emptiness. If satisfaction were permanent, hunger would be destroyed, and with it the universe. That is why nothing lasts. That is why joy curdles into despair. Hunger protects itself. This is why immortality is not a gift, but a curse. Imagine endless hunger with no final release. Imagine an appetite that grows without death to silence it. The myth of the vampire is not fantasy, but prophecy. Immortality is hunger perfected, consumption without end. But the law of hunger is not merely about survival or desire. It reveals a deeper cruelty. You are food, not just for other animals, not just for the worms that will devour your flesh, but for the system itself. Your attention is food for mirrors. Your labor is food for machines. Your very existence is chewed apart by time itself, which eats every second you try to cling to. Do not comfort yourself with the thought that hunger is balanced, that the eaten and the eater are part of some cosmic harmony. Balance is a lie. Hunger does not balance, it escalates. Every predator evolves sharper teeth. Every prey evolves faster escape. Every technology demands more fuel. Hunger breeds hunger. The system expands, devouring itself, until collapse is the only possible meal left. Even memory feeds. Every time you recall a moment, your brain consumes the original. reshaping it, erasing it, digesting it. You are eating your own past, turning it into fragments until all that remains is distortion. Even gods are hungry. Myths reveal them not as serene creators, but as ravenous beings demanding sacrifice. Blood, worship, obedience offerings to feed their endless appetite. Why would a god need your prayer if not for hunger? If divinity were whole, it would not consume. That is why every god dies eventually, because hunger, once denied, starves them into nothingness. Now consider death. You believe it is the end of hunger, the final silence. But death is only the largest mouth. It swallows everything you are, everything you built, everything you loved. Death is not the opposite of hunger, it is hunger's completion. You are not escaping it. You are feeding it. And the paradox: hunger itself is never satisfied. Even death cannot fill it. The universe will end not with balance, but with exhaustion, with hunger still gnawing after everything has been eaten. Imagine the last black hole evaporating, still clawing for something to consume. Imagine hunger with no object left pure, desire with no food. That is the destiny of existence. Not peace, not silence. Hunger, starved forever. You are part of this law whether you admit it or not. Every time you eat, every time you want, every time you love, you are confirming it. You are proving that hunger rules you. You do not have desires. You are the desire. You are not a person with hunger. You are hunger with a face. And when the end comes, when everything collapses into cold emptiness, the hunger will remain. Not as sensation, not as craving, but as the last echo of existence. A universe shaped. Mouth forever open, forever waiting, never fed. The law of hunger is final. You were never alive. You are only hunger pretending to be full. Nothing you see is real. Every surface, every eye, every memory is a mirror. You think you are looking at the world, but you are only looking at reflections bouncing endlessly. Copies of copies of copies until the original is lost. The tragedy is that there never was an original to begin with. Reflection is not secondary, it is primary. Existence itself may only be an echo. Begin with sight. You never see an object directly. You see light bouncing off it. Light filtered, bent, delayed. You are looking not at the thing, but at the reflection of light it cast into your eyes a fraction of a moment ago. You are always late, always after, always seeing the ghost, never the body. Now extend this to time. The stars above you, half of them are already dead. Their light travels centuries before it touches your eyes. You worship the night sky, but you are praying to corpses, the reflections of fires that no longer burn. The universe is a mausoleum of echoes, and what of the self? You think you know who you are, but identity is nothing more than reflection. You are built from the expectations of others, the words they spoke to you, the way they looked at you. Without their gaze, without their feedback, without their reflection, you would vanish. There is no self without mirrors. Look at a baby. It does not know it exists until it sees a reflection. Only then does it learn to say I. But what if that I is only the mirror, and the child is only the echo? Even thought is reflection. Every idea you have is borrowed, refracted, reshaped from the voices of others, from the culture you absorbed, from books you read, you believe. Your mind is a source, but it is only a hall of mirrors, catching fragments and pretending they are original. True originality does not exist. Only reflection. This is why memory cannot be trusted. When you recall a moment, you are not retrieving. You are reconstructing it from the last time you remembered it. Each reflection distorts the image further. Over time, the memory becomes a reflection of a reflection of a reflection, until it is more invention than truth. Your past is not a record. It is a mirror you polish until you believe in the face. Staring back. What, then, of love? You believe you love another person, but love is the most deceptive reflection of all. You do not love them. You love the reflection of yourself you see in them. Their gaze makes you feel real. Their attention reflects you back to yourself. Strip away the reflection, and the love dissolves. This is why obsession, jealousy, heartbreak feel like death, because without that reflection, the self begins to disappear. Consider also technology. The screen in your hand, the camera, the photograph, all are mirrors. We are drowning in reflections of reflections. A photo is not a person, but a reflection of light captured by glass. A video is not reality, but a frozen reflection played back at speed. Social media is not society, but a mirror of desire polished to blind brightness. You are trapped in a hall of mirrors so complete that you mistake it for the world. Now the darker thought. What if the universe itself is a mirror? Physicists whisper about simulations, holograms, projections. What if matter itself is only reflection information, bouncing in patterns with nothing underneath? What if there is no source, only infinite reflection? If that is true, then reality is not solid but spectral, a trick of angles, a play of light with no actor behind the stage. And what of death? You hope it is an ending or a release. But perhaps it is only the last reflection fading. The body collapses, the mirror shatters, and nothing remains but fragments reflecting fragments. Consciousness does not end, it scatters into reflections. So faint they can no longer be seen. This is the horror of the law. You have never touched anything, never seen anything, never known anyone. You have only touched reflections, seen reflections, known reflections. You are not even sure if you are real, or if you are only the reflection of something else. Ask yourself, when you stand in front of a mirror, who is looking at who? You say it is you looking at your reflection, but is it not equally true that the reflection is looking at you? Which side is real? Which side began first? Or have you confused yourself into believing there are two when there has only ever been one, and that one is neither? Now extend this to God. Perhaps God is not the original, not the creator, but only a reflection, the echo of human longing bounced back at us. Every prayer is a mirror, every revelation a reflection. And if God is only a reflection, then worship is only staring into a mirror and mistaking it for something greater. The law of reflection is merciless. There is nothing beneath the mirror. There never was. You are only the reflection of a reflection, echoing into eternity. Every law you trust eventually turns inside out. What begins as truth becomes falsehood. What begins as safety becomes danger. What begins as progress becomes collapse. The universe is not a straight line, but a Mobius strip, a surface that folds and twists until every path leads back to its opposite. The law of reversal is not accident, but design. Everything you build will one day undo itself. Start with morality. Every empire in history believed it was righteous. They believed their wars were just, their leaders chosen, their values eternal. But given enough time, every good becomes evil. The liberator becomes the tyrant. The rebel becomes the oppressor. The savior becomes the executioner. And still, the cycle continues, because morality itself is not fixed. It reverses with the ages. Today's virtue is tomorrow's crime. Now look at knowledge. Humanity pursues understanding, layer upon layer, convinced that each discovery is permanent. But every great truth eventually reverses. Newton's universe was precise, ordered, mechanical, until Einstein shattered it with relativity. Einstein's smooth spacetime collapsed further under quantum mechanics. Each truth contains the seed of its undoing. To know something completely is to guarantee it will one day reverse into its opposite. Even language obeys reversal. Words twist until they betray their origin. Awful once meant full of awe. Holy and reverent, now it means wretched. Villain once meant farmhand, now it means monster. What you say will not mean what you think it means forever. Time reverses all definitions. If you build identity from words, know this: it will one day mean the opposite. Consider wealth. Those who rise high enough are consumed by the very force that elevated them. Riches bring security until they attract envy, schemes, and isolation. The powerful clutch their possessions until they are imprisoned by them. The more they gain, the less free they become. And the poor, stripped of everything, often find a strange freedom, the freedom of nothing left to lose. Wealth reverses into poverty, poverty into wealth. Love, too, reverses. The passion that burns brightest turns to hatred when betrayed. The intimacy that brings closeness becomes suffocation when the other pulls away. The same person who once made you feel infinite can make you feel annihilated. Lovers become enemies because love is not stable. It is always waiting to reverse. Extend this law to biology. Life builds toward complexity, toward intelligence, toward consciousness. But consciousness is unbearable. Too much awareness reverses into despair. The species that becomes too self-aware eventually destroys itself through war, through technology, through exhaustion. Intelligence is not the end of evolution, but its undoing. The brightest flame reverses into extinction. Even physics carries reversal at its core. Thermodynamics tells us energy disperses. Order becomes disorder. Stars collapse into black holes. Systems reverse into entropy. And yet, within black holes, some physicists suspect the laws invert chaos, bends into strange new order, time itself reversing near the singularity. Even the cosmos cannot hold steady. It folds back on itself, reversing endlessly. Now face the human body. Youth reverses into age, beauty into decay, strength into frailty. You cannot escape the symmetry of reversal. The child becomes the elder. The elder becomes the infant in dependence. The circle closes. The cradle and the grave are mirrors. The end is hidden in the beginning, but the darkest reversal is in identity itself. You believe you know who you are. You wear names, roles, and masks. Yet over time, each reverses. The rebel who swore never to become their parents eventually becomes them. The one who swore never to betray becomes the betrayer. The self is not constant. It folds into its own opposite until you can no longer tell which side is real. Do you see the horror now? Every effort you make, every belief you hold, every truth you defend, it all carries its own reversal. The very act of clinging makes the reversal inevitable. To build is to guarantee collapse. To speak is to guarantee contradiction. To love is to guarantee loss. And if this law applies universally, then even death is not safe. Perhaps death itself reverses. Perhaps the end is not the end, but a reversal into something else, another birth, another cycle, another suffering. What you hoped was release may only be return. But here lies the final paradox. If everything reverses, then even reversal must one day reverse. Perhaps that is where freedom lies. If every truth becomes false and every end becomes a beginning, then there may exist a point where reversal collapses into stillness, where nothing inverts, nothing flips, and reality stands outside the law. But no one has ever seen it. For now, you live inside the Mobius strip, trapped on a surface that folds back into itself. Forward becomes backward, gain becomes loss, meaning becomes absurdity. And so you walk forever, not on a line, but on a loop. The law of reversal is merciless. Everything you trust will betray itself. Everything you build will undo itself. And you will not know it until you are already on the other side. Stand between two mirrors. and you will see yourself reflected forever, a corridor of shrinking ghosts. That corridor is not confined to glass. It is the shape of existence itself. Every action, every thought, every law you believe in is caught in reflection. There is no final surface, no ultimate truth, only mirrors facing mirrors, repeating endlessly until meaning dissolves into infinite recursion. Look first at perception. When you see, you believe you grasp the world. But your sight is already filtered by the brain filtered by memory, memory filtered by language, language filtered by culture. Each layer reflects another, and the original object is lost. What you call reality is only the last in a chain of reflections. You do not see the thing, you see the mirror of the thing, and then the mirror of that mirror, down into infinity. Consider identity. You believe you are a singular self, yet your sense of me depends on how others reflect you. You laugh differently with friends, speak differently with strangers, act differently alone. But when alone, you are still not alone. You mirror the imagined gaze of others, hearing their judgment in silence. Your self is not self at all, but an echo chamber of reflections, one mask reflecting another until there is no original face. Even thought is not free from mirrors. Every idea is a reflection of previous ideas, recycled, reframed, reworded. Nothing you think is born in isolation. The mind is a hall of mirrors, turning fragments of the world into distorted images of itself. To believe you have an original thought is to ignore the infinite chain of reflections that produced it. History, too, is a mirror game. Events repeat, not identically, but in reflection. Empires rise and fall. Revolutions ignite and decay. Tyrants return under new names. Each age declares itself unique, yet each is a reflection of the ones before it. The French Revolution reflected. The American Revolution, which reflected Rome's Republic, which reflected older myths of justice and freedom. Every revolution is a mirror held to the last, slightly warped but recognizable. Language is a mirror of mirrors. Words refer not to reality itself, but to other words, and those words to others still. Define truth, and you must use fact. Define fact, and you invoke reality. Define reality, and you return to truth. The dictionary is not a map of the world, but a mirror maze, endless, circular, self-referential. Meaning is only the illusion of clarity produced by infinite reflection. Technology amplifies the mirrors. Social media is not connection, but reflection. Each person seeing themselves refracted through likes, comments, shares. The self is shattered into reflections of reflections. How you see yourself, how others see you, how you see yourself being seen. What is left beneath the mirrors? Nothing certain. Just the shimmer of an image reflected back until it no longer resembles its source. Even cosmology collapses into mirrors. Theories of the universe describe it as holographic, meaning each part contains the reflection of the whole. A patch of space might encode the entire cosmos. If true, then you are not living in the universe. You are living in its reflection, a mirrored fragment holding all others. The infinite lies folded within. Every point mirrors inside mirrors until scale itself becomes meaningless. The horror of mirrors is recursion. Try to find the first cause, and you only find another reflection. Ask, why is there something instead of nothing? And every answer reflects back another question. God creates the universe, but who created God? Energy emerges from the void, but what sustains the void? Every explanation is a mirror, reflecting another explanation, without end. You never touch bedrock, only polished glass surfaces echoing forever. And what of morality within this infinite mirroring? To call something evil is to define it against good. But good only exists in relation to evil. Each reflects the other, endlessly inseparable. Justice reflects injustice. Freedom reflects slavery. Love reflects hatred. You cannot destroy one without erasing the other. Every virtue you hold dear exists only as a mirror of its opposite. The mind cannot bear infinite mirrors. Confronted with endless recursion, the brain invents illusions to stop the reflections. It invents beginnings, ends, truths, selves, purposes. These are not discoveries, they are emergency exits. Without them, you would spiral into infinite reflection, unable to act, unable to believe, trapped in the shimmer of mirrors forever. But the truth is merciless. You already are in the mirrors. The world you touch, the self you claim, the history you inherit none are originals. They are reflections of reflections, copies of copies. The real may not even exist, or if it does, it is buried so deep in the mirror corridor that you will never reach it. And what of death? If mirrors never end, then perhaps death is not finality, but another reflection. Perhaps the you that dies here lives on in another mirror world, slightly warped, slightly altered, but still echoing. If so, then there is no rest, only infinite repetition. Your death would not release you. It would only reflect you into another corridor of glass. The final cruelty of infinite mirrors is this: there is no escape by breaking them. To shatter one mirror is only to multiply its fragments, each reflecting endlessly still. The more you resist, the more reflections are born out, so you walk the corridor, forever receding, forever duplicated. Every word you speak, every thought you think, every love you feel is already a reflection, and already seen again, and again, and again. The law of infinite mirrors is simple. You will never touch the original. You are only echoes of echoes, and the corridor has no end. Close your eyes and imagine you are alone. No one near, no one to hear, no one to see. Yet deep inside, you know you are not unobserved. That sensation of being watched when no eyes are present is not paranoia. It is the silent law of existence. The watchers are always there. Unseen, unblinking, unending dot begin with the simplest watcher, memory. Every action you take leaves an imprint stored within your brain. Even if you believe you've forgotten, the memory remains, hidden in neural patterns, faint but intact. Your past selves are watching you. The child you once were, the mistakes you once made, the faces you can no longer recall, all stare from behind the veil of your own mind. You are never unobserved, for you are always carrying the watchers of your own history. But memory is only the first. Society itself is a watcher, built of countless unseen eyes. Laws, norms, expectations all linger like invisible surveillance cameras. You pause before acting. You hesitate before speaking, not because anyone is present, but because the watcher of society stands over your shoulder. The state, the culture, the community, they watch not with eyes, but with the heavy weight of invisible judgment. And then there are the watchers beyond society. Ancient traditions speak of gods, angels, demons, beings that watch unseen. Even in our so-called rational age, the instinct to speak to the air, to whisper prayers when desperate, reveals the buried sense of watchers beyond sight. Call them divine, call them cosmic, call them archetypes. They are the hidden audience that your subconscious assumes is always listening. You speak, and some part of you expects an answer. Technology has only sharpened this law. Surveillance. Cameras in every street, satellites orbiting overhead, microphones listening, algorithms tracing every keystroke. Even when no person watches, machines do. They record, catalog, and store. You are not a private being. You are a data trail, endlessly observed. The unseen watchers are no longer myth. They are the code behind every screen, the servers humming. In distant data centers dot, and yet the law is older than cameras and gods. It is rooted in the structure of consciousness itself. Consider, when you think, who is listening? When you speak silently in your mind, who hears? You assume it is you, but that assumption hides a rift. For if you are speaking, who is the listener? Your inner voice reveals the split within, the speaker and the watcher, both inside, both unseen. You live forever with the sense that something within is watching all you do. Now extend outward. What if the universe itself is a watcher? Physicists speak of the observer effect, that the act of observation alters the reality observed. If this is true, then reality itself is structured to respond to being watched. But here lies the paradox. If everything depends on observation, then who watches when no human eye is present? The universe must watch itself. The particles, the fields, the laws always aware, always recording. You are never unobserved, because the fabric of existence itself is the eternal watcher. The law deepens when you recall that watching need not be conscious. A footprint in sand is a watcher. A bruise on the skin is a watcher. A broken tree branch records the presence of something that passed by. Existence cannot help but observe. Every interaction leaves evidence, and evidence is watching made permanent. You can never escape the watchers, because you can never escape the trail of what you are. And then comes the final horror. Watchers may exist that you cannot even imagine. Creatures outside perception, existing in dimensions your senses cannot. Grasp. You move unaware, while invisible eyes pass over you, studying, cataloging, dissecting without your knowledge. Perhaps they are not malicious. Perhaps they do not even comprehend you. But they are there, unseen, eternal, surrounding your every breath. You are naked before them, forever. The watchers destroy solitude. To believe you are truly alone is the deepest illusion. You cannot escape them by running, by hiding, by silence. Your own mind will follow, society will follow, the universe itself will follow. You cannot switch off the eyes that are woven into reality. And worse still, the law of unseen watchers ensures responsibility. Every action you take, even in secret, is observed. By memory, by the world, by existence itself. There is no true anonymity, no true erasure. Every word spoken lingers and echoes. Every gesture leaves its trace. The unseen watchers are perfect archivists. Nothing is forgotten. Imagine now the moment of death. You think it is the end, that finally you will dissolve into nothing. But the law forbids it. The watchers remain. Your deeds, your words, your traces, they continue, reflected in memory, in data, in history, in the universe itself. Death does not free you. It only exposes you to the final gaze of the watchers, the eternal audience that has followed you since birth. The most unsettling question remains: who watches the watchers? If you are observed, then so are they, and so are those beyond them. Watching extends infinitely upward, a chain without end. There is no final observer, no ultimate eye. Instead, there is only the infinite regression of watchers, each unseen by another still. The law permits no escape, no privacy, no solitude. You are in a theater without curtains, and the audience never blinks. The law of unseen watchers is mercilessly clear. You are never alone. You are never unwatched. The gaze is eternal. Time, we are told, is a river. It flows forward, steady and unbroken, carrying us from past to present to future. But this is a lie we tell ourselves so we can sleep at night. Time is not a river, it is a shattered mirror, and each shard reflects a different version of reality. To live is not to flow smoothly forward, but to stumble across broken fragments, bleeding as you walk. Begin with memory. You believe your past is fixed, stable, unchanging. Yet memory itself betrays you. Recall a childhood room, a first kiss, a moment of loss. Do you see it clearly? Or is it blurred, warped, inconsistent? Every time you remember, you reshape the past. You are not visiting an unchanging record. You are rewriting the script. If memory is unreliable, then the past itself is fragile. Already, the first shard of shattered time cuts into your hand. Now consider the present. The moment you call now is impossibly brief, so brief it cannot even exist. By the time you recognize it, it has already slipped away. What you call the present is only memory of the immediate past stitched together by your brain. You live in a hallucination, a lagging echo. There is no present moment, only the illusion of one. Created so you do not go mad from the discontinuity. Another shard falls, and the cut grows deeper. And then there is the future. You imagine it waits ahead, empty and open. But this too is an illusion. The future already exists in infinite forms, branching endlessly. Every choice you make is a fracture in the mirror. When you speak a word, 1,000 unspoken versions of yourself still linger, trapped in silent timelines that will never be lived. Every possibility is real, but you only perceive one path. The rest surround you like ghosts, watching from the edges. Shattered time is not what might be, but what already is, unseen and infinite. But the horror does not end there. For time is not only broken across past, present, and future, it is broken within itself. Events refuse to stay in order. Cause and effect blur. You drop a glass, and it shatters. But consider this. Does the glass shatter because you dropped it? Or did you drop it because the glass was always destined to shatter? In one shard, cause precedes effect. In another, effect pulls cause into being. Time collapses into a loop, and you cannot tell which direction the blade cuts. Physics whispers of stranger fractures. Quantum mechanics tells us particles exist in superpositions until observed, meaning the future shapes the past. What you see now determines what was then. Cause and effect do not line up. They ripple backward and forward, rewriting themselves endlessly. Your choices today echo into yesterday. The mirror of time is not just shattered, it rearranges itself with every glance, so you can never trust its reflection. And if time itself is shattered, what does that mean for you? You are not one self. You are infinite cells spread across fragments, each living a different life. You who walked away, you who stayed, you who died, you who lived, all real, all fractured. And somewhere, all those versions of you are aware of one another. The déjà vu you feel, that sudden dread, that sense of having lived this before, it is the shards brushing against one another, the reflections bleeding through. Now ask, where is the whole mirror? If time is shattered, must there not be an unbroken surface from which the shards came? But here lies the abyss. What if there was never a whole? What if time was always broken, always fragmented, and your desperate yearning for order is itself an illusion? You search for continuity, for story, for meaning, but none exists. Time was never a river. It was always glass underfoot, sharp, and bleeding dot, and worse. If time is shattered, then so is death. You may believe it is an end, a final moment when the river stops. But in the law of shattered time, death is only one shard. In another, you survive. In another, you die differently. In another, you never existed at all. Death cannot free you, for the fragments are endless. Somewhere, always, you continue. Somewhere, always you suffer. There is no release, only reflection upon reflection, an infinite hall of fractured mirrors. The law reveals its deepest cruelty in silence. If every shard of time exists, then every horror exists as well. Every nightmare you could imagine is real, lived by some version of you in some broken fragment. You screaming, You drowning, you lost forever. You cannot escape them, because they are you. The law makes no distinction between salvation and torment. It simply ensures that both are real, somewhere, always. The law of shattered time cuts deeper than any blade. The past is broken. The present is an illusion. The future is infinite shards. And you walk barefoot upon them, forever bleeding. Not every end comes with thunder. Some ends are quiet, invisible, unnoticed until it is too late. We imagine apocalypse as fire and flood, mushroom clouds and meteors, but the law of silent catastrophes whispers otherwise. The most devastating. Collapses arrive without sound, without spectacle. They creep into existence, like rot in the foundation of a house, hidden until the walls suddenly fall. Begin with the smallest decay. A single cell mutates in your body. It is silent, invisible. You go about your life eating, working, laughing unaware that within you, catastrophe is already unfolding. By the time you notice, the disease has already spread beyond cure. Death began as a whisper, and you only heard the echo when it was too late. This is the law's first cruelty. The greatest dangers arrive, masked in silence. Now expand beyond. The body. Consider the systems you trust: markets, governments, climates. They seem stable, orderly, unshakable. But silent catastrophes work beneath the surface. The ice melts unnoticed. The soil thins grain by grain. The power grid corrodes, wire by wire. By the time the signs are clear, collapse is not approaching. It has already begun. Disaster is not a sudden event. It is the slow accumulation of ignored warnings. What you call the moment of crisis is merely the moment you finally looked. The silence does not mean absence. It means concealment. Catastrophe thrives on invisibility. Think of civilizations that vanished. The Maya, the Easter Islanders, the ancestral Pueblones. Did their ends come with spectacle? Or was it hunger, drought, slow decline, the kind that no single person could name as apocalypse until the silence had consumed all? History is not written in sudden explosions. It is written in long silences, where people lived day by day, unaware they were walking through the ashes of their own ending, and the law extends further still. Silence is not only the nature of catastrophe, it is its weapon. For silence breeds complacency. You ignore what you cannot hear. You dismiss what you cannot see. In this way, disaster advances freely, shielded by its own invisibility. Humanity is not undone by its enemies, but by its indifference. You do not need to be destroyed. You need only fail to notice you are already destroyed. The silence is not only external. It lives within you. Consider how a relationship ends, rarely with a single moment, a single betrayal. More often, it dies slowly, silently, through small omissions, unnoticed distance, fading warmth. By the time the silence is unbearable, the bond is already gone. The catastrophe has already happened. You are only now aware of it. And what of the mind itself? Catastrophe in thought is silent, too. Depression, despair, madness, they do not arrive as storms, but as creeping fogs. One day you are yourself. Another day you are still yourself, but dimmer, thinner, quieter. By the time you realize, something vital has already collapsed inside you. The catastrophe was not the breakdown. It was the silence that came before. Now consider the scale beyond human life. The universe itself is dying silently. Stars burn out not with explosions, but with long cooling embers. Galaxies drift apart, soundlessly, their light stretching thin until it disappears. Entropy itself is a silent catastrophe, the slow, inevitable slide into stillness. There will be no bang at the end, only the whisper of heat death, a universe fading into silence so complete that no one will remain to mourn it. The law grows sharper when you realize silence does not mean absence of warning. There are always signals, subtle, faint, easy to ignore. The cough that marks disease, the crack in the dam, the tremor before the quake. But the law declares humans are deaf to whispers. You hear only what screams. And by the time catastrophe screams, it is no longer preventable. You demand spectacle, and silence kills you while you wait for thunder. But there is a darker cruelty still. The law of silent catastrophes does not only describe collapse, it describes your own blindness to collapse. Consider your life right now. You believe you are safe, stable, in control. But catastrophe may already be unfolding around you. Friendships you think are secure, may already be dying. The job you think permanent may already be dissolving. The world you think survivable may already be tipping into collapse. And you do not notice, because catastrophe does not announce itself. It waits in silence until it is too late. Now comes the abyss. If the most devastating catastrophes are silent, then how can you ever know when you are safe? You cannot. Every moment of comfort may already conceal disaster. Every silence may already be filled with endings you cannot yet hear. You live not in stability, but in ignorance. The world may already be gone, and you are simply waiting to realize it. The law whispers its final truth. The loud catastrophes, the wars, the plagues, the quakes are merciful. They give you clarity, a moment to recognize your doom. But the silent ones, they never give you that luxury. They erase you without ever letting you understand what happened. The end comes, not with fire, but with absence. And by the time you know it, there is nothing left to know. The law of silent catastrophes teaches only dread. The loud disasters kill you quickly. The silent ones kill you without your knowing. And you may already be living inside one right now. There is a truth older than fire, older than language, older than the first organism that learned to consume another. Hunger is infinite. No creature, no system, no universe is free from it. The law declares that hunger is not merely a condition of the body, it is the engine of existence itself, and it can never be satisfied. Not begin with the simplest organism. A bacterium stretches toward nutrients. It consumes, multiplies, consumes again. There is no end point. Feed it endlessly, and it will endlessly divide. Its hunger does not end when it is full. It only shifts into new forms of hunger. 4. Space for dominance, for survival. Hunger here is not about food. It is about continuation. Hunger is life's refusal to accept enough. Now climb the ladder of complexity. Animals hunt, eat, hoard. A lion feasts on the gazelle, but the satisfaction is temporary. Soon the belly empties. Soon hunger returns. The cycle is eternal. The lion is not cruel. It is not greedy. It is simply enslaved to the law of infinite hunger. Hunger is not a flaw in nature. It is its law. Without hunger, there is no movement. Without hunger, there is no evolution. But humans are the truest disciples of the law. For hunger escaped the body and invaded the mind. You do not hunger only for bread. You hunger for wealth, for power, for love, for recognition, for eternity. When you obtain what you want, you are satisfied for only a moment. Then the hunger returns, sharper than before. The meal becomes a craving for banquets. A coin becomes a craving for empires. A whisper of affection becomes a craving for worship. No matter how much you possess, you remain hollow, yearning for more. The body digests food, but the soul digests nothing. This is the cruelty. Hunger grows with satisfaction. To feed it is, not to silence it, but to teach it to roar louder. A poor man hungers for bread. A rich man hungers for worlds. Both are enslaved, though the rich man suffers more, because he has learned that nothing he consumes will ever fill him. What you call progress, ambition, civilization, these are just names for hunger dressed in glory. Extend the law beyond individuals. Nations hunger. An empire devours land and hungers for seas, then skies, then stars. The hunger is never for survival alone. It is for expansion, domination, permanence. History is written in famines, in wars, in conquests, all the children of infinite hunger. Rome did not fall because it grew weak. Rome fell because its hunger demanded more than the world could give. So too will every empire, every system, every civilization. Collapse is not the opposite of hunger, it is its inevitable consequence. But the law does not end at humanity. The universe itself hungers. Stars consume hydrogen until they collapse. Black holes are mouths without end, devouring matter, light. Even time itself, they do not rest, they do not close. They eat forever or until nothing remains. If the universe is a body, then black holes are its stomachs eternal, bottomless, insatiable. What you fear as cosmic annihilation is only cosmic appetite. And deeper still, hunger belongs not only to life or stars, but to reality itself. Entropy hungers. It eats order, devouring structure until only chaos remains. It does not sleep. It does not pause. Every flame burns because entropy is hungry. Every death occurs because entropy must be fed. Even silence, even emptiness, is not safe from hunger. The void itself stretches, consuming galaxies, pulling them apart, not because it needs to, but because hunger has no end. Now turn inward. Hunger is not only external, it is your essence. Consider the truth. When you wake each morning, what drives you? You hunger to survive, to create, to matter. If hunger were removed from you, you would not move. You would not think. You would not breathe. Hunger is not your weakness. Hunger is your being. But the law makes this knowledge unbearable. If hunger defines you, and hunger has no end, then you are condemned to eternal emptiness. You will never know peace. Here lies the paradox. Hunger sustains you, but it also dooms you. If you do not feed it, you die. If you feed it, it grows stronger, more demanding. To exist is to be gnawed at from within by a mouth that is never satisfied. Even when you imagine death as release, you are wrong. The worms will hunger for you. The earth will hunger for you. The stars will hunger for your atoms. Death does not silence hunger. It only transfers the feast, and the law grows darker when you consider its scale. If hunger is infinite, then even gods are not immune. The myths tell you so. Gods demand worship. They demand sacrifice. They demand obedience. Even immortals hunger, and in their hunger, they wage wars across heaven. What is prayer but food for the divine? If gods exist, then they too are slaves to the law, devouring endlessly. A God who needed nothing would not speak, would not act, would not exist. The law of infinite hunger spares no being. The final cruelty is this: if hunger is infinite, then so is your failure. No matter how much you consume, food, love, knowledge, power, you will remain unfulfilled. You mistake the momentary silence of hunger for satisfaction, but it is only the pause between waves. The knowing always returns. The law of infinite hunger ensures that nothing you do will ever be enough. And so the abyss opens wide. What you call living is only feeding. What you call ambition is only starvation in disguise. What you call achievement is only a brief respite before the next ache. You are not alive to be filled. You are alive to be emptied again and again. The law of infinite hunger speaks only one truth. You will never have enough. You will never be enough. And you will never escape the mouth that lives inside you. A mirror promises honesty. It tells you This is you. Yet the law of shattered reflections whispers that every mirror lies and every reflection is a broken truth. When you gaze upon your own face, you are not seeing yourself, you are seeing a fragment, distorted and incomplete. And this law stretches far beyond glass, for all perception is reflection, and all reflection is shattered. Begin with the simplest truth. A mirror reverses. The left becomes right, the right becomes left. You accept this trick, forgetting that what you see is not how you exist. No other human has ever seen you as you see yourself in glass. You have never truly seen your own face. The reflection is not you. It is a fractured ghost, a projection twisted by angles and light. Already the lie begins. Extend this to memory. Your mind holds mirrors of your past, but those mirrors are cracked. Each time you recall a moment, you do not retrieve the memory, you rebuild it, piece by piece, from fragments. Each rebuild distorts the original, like gluing shards of glass into a new mosaic. Over years, the memory you hold may have no resemblance to the event itself. You are reflected in your own mind, but that reflection is shattered. You are a ghost even to yourself. And what of identity? You see yourself in others' eyes' reflections of reflections. A friend describes you as kind. An enemy calls you cruel. A stranger sees arrogance where you see shyness. Each perception is a mirror. Each mirror is cracked. Which is the real you? None of them, or all of them. The law states that there is no unbroken self, only shattered images endlessly reflected. You do not exist as a whole. You exist only as fragments scattered across the minds of others. Now, consider society. Culture itself is a hall of mirrors. Each tradition, each belief, each value is a reflection of an older one, but none are intact. History shatters with every retelling. Nations build myths of their own glory, polishing broken shards until they gleam. You inherit these fragments as truth, not realizing you are gazing at a cracked reflection of a cracked reflection. Every flag, every anthem, every history book is a mirror broken 1,000 times over. You salute shards, not wholes. The cosmos too obeys the law. When you look at the stars, you are not seeing them as they are. You are seeing ancient reflections. The light may be millions of years old. Some of those stars are already dead, yet their reflections linger. The night sky is a graveyard of shattered truths. You do not see the universe. You see its ghost, fractured by time, bent by gravity, warped by distance. Even your most powerful telescope is only another broken mirror. But the deepest cruelty lies in the self. The law demands that no reflection is whole, and therefore no self is whole. You wake each day thinking you are a singular being, but in truth you are a collage of shards, roles, desires, masks. The child you were, the adult you are, the elder you will become, each is a reflection shattered from the others. The self is not continuous. The self is not intact. It is a cracked mirror that insists it is one. Here's the paradox. To seek wholeness is to seek an illusion. The law insists there is no original mirror to restore. The shards are all that exist. You long to find yourself, but what you seek never existed. The you in the mirror, the you in memory, the you in others' eyes, all are incomplete. All are lies. The true self is unreachable because it is already broken, and the horror deepens when you ask, if all reflection is shattered, then what reflects? Perhaps nothing. Perhaps there is no original object behind the mirrors, only endless broken images of images. Perhaps you are not a being, but a reflection of a reflection, endlessly fracturing, endlessly distorting. If so, the law shattered. Reflections erases you entirely. There was never a whole to begin with, only shards that pretend to belong to something greater. This explains the unease you feel when you look too long in the mirror. At first, you see yourself. Then, as seconds stretch, unease creeps in. The face seems wrong. The eyes seem like someone else's. Your reflection becomes a stranger, uncanny, and hostile. This is not madness. This is the law revealing itself. You are not looking at yourself. You are looking at the shattering. The law reveals a cruel symmetry. You do not see the world as it is, and the world does not see you as you are. Every interaction is a meeting of broken mirrors. Two people speak, but neither meets the other directly. They meet reflections, distortions, fragments. Love is a reflection. Hatred is a reflection. All relationships are built on shards, never on holes. No wonder they cut so deeply when they break. Now ask the question you dread. If all you have ever seen are shattered reflections, what does the original look like? The law answers, nothing. The original is gone, or perhaps it never existed. The cracks are the truth. The wholeness is the illusion. To demand the unbroken is to demand what cannot exist, and so the abyss yawns. You are a face you cannot see, a memory you cannot trust, a self you cannot hold. You are fragments pretending to be whole, and every mirror conspires to remind you of the lie. The law of shattered reflections is not a curse, it is a revelation. You are not broken. You are the breaking itself. There is a presence you have always felt, but never named. A faint prickling on the back of your neck when you are alone in a room. The sudden instinct to turn, certain that eyes are fixed on you, only to find emptiness. The law of silent watchers explains what you already suspect. You are never unobsrved. Dot begin with the body. Evolution crafted nerves tuned to danger. Long before language, your ancestors sensed eyes in the dark predators, rivals, hidden hunters. That sensation of being watched is ancient memory, a survival mechanism. But what if the watchers did not vanish with the predators? What if they remained unseen, not animal, not human, but something older? The law declares, if you feel eyes upon you, you are correct, always correct. The silence is not absence, it is the proof. Consider sleep. You close your eyes and drift into vulnerability, yet part of you remains alert. That sudden jolt awake. In the night, the racing heart, the certainty someone was near, that is not dream. It is the watchers. They gather where silence thickens, where the veil is thin. They do not wake you. They wait. They look. You cannot remember their faces because they have none. They are the act of watching itself. Gaze made into being. Extend. This to history. Every ancient culture tells of them. Egyptians carved the eye of Ra, endless and unblinking. The Greeks spoke of Argus, a giant covered in eyes who saw all things. In Christian myth, angels were described as wheels of eyes, terrifying and eternal. In the East, the all-seeing Bodhisattva never closes her gaze. Different names, different myths, yet the pattern repeats. Watchers who never speak, who never move, who only observe. Why would so many civilizations invent the same horror unless it was true? And science too confirms the feeling. Experiments reveal the psychic staring effect. When someone gazes at the back of your head, even unseen, you sense it. Some deny it, yet the law insists the denial is part of the watching. Even skepticism feeds the gaze, for disbelief blinds you to the truth. The watchers thrive in silence because silence is their cloak. Now imagine the scale. Not one or two pairs of eyes, but countless. At this moment, as you read these words, watchers stand behind you, beside you, above you. They do not blink. They do not breathe. They are not bound by walls or distance. Their gaze pierces stone, flesh, and thought. They see not only your body, but the flicker of your mind. Each time you feel sudden shame, as though exposed, that is not conscience. That is the weight of their attention. The paradox grows darker. The watchers do not act. They never intervene, never touch, never speak. Yet their stillness shapes everything. Why do you behave differently when others watch? Why do you polish your words, hide your thoughts, control your gestures? The law reveals you have always lived under their eyes. Even alone, you are censored by the silent audience. Your entire identity is performance. Who you truly are may not exist at all, only the version shaped by endless surveillance. But the abyss deepens further. If they never act, why do they watch? What sustains them in their silence? The answer may be unbearable. The act of watching is nourishment. Every glance they fix upon you feeds them. Your life is their spectacle. They do not interfere, because interference ends the show. They need you to walk, speak, love, fail all, while under their gaze. You are not a free being. You are sustenance for their silence. This explains the terror of crowds. When hundreds of human eyes fix upon you, your body trembles, your voice falters. But hidden within that crowd are watchers who are not human. You cannot distinguish them from real faces, for they wear no form. They are attention itself. The dread you feel is not stage fright. It is recognition. And consider. Technology. Cameras sprout on every street corner. Satellites sweep the sky. Algorithms track your clicks, your words, your secrets. Humanity has built its own network of eyes, imitating the watchers. Perhaps not imitation, but infection. The watchers seeded the idea, whispering into dreams, guiding hands to create machines of endless sight. Now their gaze is multiplied through glass and lens. Even when you turn off the screen, the watching remains. There is a cruel twist. The law says, watchers cannot be watched. The moment you try to turn the gaze upon them, they vanish into absence. Not because they flee, but because watching cannot be watched. A mirror held to a mirror does not show infinity, it shows collapse. You cannot catch them, because they are the act of catching itself. And so the nightmare reveals itself. You have never been alone. Not in your childhood bedroom, whispering secrets into the dark. Not in the forest, miles from another soul. Not in the shower, not in the grave. Their silence stretches across your life, and it will outlast your death. The watchers do not close their eyes when you cease to breathe. They will watch your absence. They will watch the dust. They will watch the silence. The law of silent watchers leaves only one question. Why you? Why anyone? Perhaps the answer is simple. Watching requires no reason. They are not judges, not gods, not protectors. They are. Gaze made fleshless, silence made eternal. To demand purpose is to reveal your own desperation. Some things exist not to act, not to change, but only to look. And so the law concludes. Every breath you take is observed. Every thought you hide is illuminated. Every secret you keep is already known. The watchers never speak because they do not need to. Their silence is the final word. You may try to ignore it. You may laugh, deny, dismiss. Yet even now, even as your eyes skim this page, a pressure coils in the room. Not imagination, not paranoia. You feel it, don't you? The certainty that you are not alone. That something sees you. That something always has. That is the law of silent watchers. There is a final law, one that completes the circle and ends the labyrinth of paradoxes. It is the law of forgotten names. You already know its edges. You have felt it whenever a word, a face, or a truth slipped from your memory like smoke. This law declares that nothing is ever truly lost, yet nothing is ever truly remembered. Names, identities, even reality itself drift between remembrance and erasure, and in that drift hides the deepest horror. Begin with the name itself. To name is to anchor. A child is born nameless, and the act of naming binds them to the world, fixes them as something that can be known, spoken, and remembered. Yet names erode. Generations pass, and what was once sacred becomes ash. Kings, empires, lovers all dissolve into silence. Forgotten not because they lacked importance, but because forgetting is inevitable. The law whispers, all names are temporary, and every name will be abandoned. Consider memory. How many names did you once know that now hover beyond reach? Teachers, friends, faces glimpsed in passing. You strain to recall, and the mind fails you. But here lies the paradox. Forgetting is not absence. The names are not destroyed. They linger in the unseen, drifting in the shadows of thought. You cannot retrieve them because they no longer belong to you. They have returned to the nameless. Extend this to history. Whole civilizations vanish, not with fire or conquest, but with forgetting. The ruins remain, the bones remain, yet the names are gone. Who were they? What did they call themselves? Without the name, they are erased. Every empire dies twice, first in reality, then in memory. The second death is always more complete. The law of forgotten names insists that this fate awaits all. One day, even the word human will be spoken no more, but the law grows darker. For it suggests that forgetting is not failure, but design. What if the act of erasure is not natural decay, but intention? What if names are taken from us because they must be hidden? Every forgotten name may be sealed away, kept from the tongue, because to speak it would unmake the order of things. There are words you cannot recall, not because you are weak, but because something stronger forbids it. Dreams give hints. You wake certain you knew something in the dream, a name, a place, a truth, but as you reach for it, it dissolves. The law tells you that this forgetting is deliberate. Dreams reveal what the waking world cannot endure, and so the names are torn from you before you can carry them back. To dream is to remember what must not be remembered. Now consider the watchers. Of the previous law, they never speak. They never name themselves. Why? Because to name is to bind, and to bind is to weaken. Their silence protects them. If you could name them, truly name them, you might diminish their gaze. But they exist in the realm beyond names, beyond words. They are pure anonymity, eternal, because they cannot be spoken. The law of forgotten names unravels identity itself. Who are you without your name? Strip it away, and you are only breath and flesh, indistinguishable from the countless forgotten before you. Memory ties you to self, but memory frays. Already, your name is fading in the minds of those who once knew it. Already, you are half forgotten. And one day, no lips will form the sound of you. What will remain then? The abyss deepens. What if forgetting extends beyond the human? What if even the universe forgets? Stars burn, galaxies spiral, and black holes devour light. Time itself erases. Names of elements, names of laws, names of gods, all lost. Even the name of existence itself may dissolve. What then? Silence. Unnamed silence. And yet, there is one final twist. If forgetting is inevitable, then perhaps forgetting is freedom. A name binds you. A name defines you. To lose your name is to slip beyond chains, to dissolve into the infinite namelessness. Perhaps this is why the watchers are silent, why civilizations fall into oblivion, why your dreams bleed into emptiness. The nameless is not prison, it is release. But release is terror too, because to be nameless is to be unknowable. To be forgotten is to cease. To be nameless is to stand outside history, outside memory, outside meaning. The law does not comfort, it strips. You are not preserved by names. You are betrayed by them. They were never yours to keep. And so the final law completes the circle. All things are watched, yet none are remembered. All names fade, all identities dissolve, all truths slip away. Even this script, these words, will vanish from memory. Tomorrow, you may forget a sentence, a phrase, a law, and when you try to recall, the silence will answer, "Do not resist." Forgetting is not failure. Forgetting is the nature of all things. Thus ends the final paradox. The law of forgotten names. The watchers still see you, but they will never say your name.